Hello, everybody, and welcome to Keeping You Company, the podcast where Rick Amania and I ramble on about topics that are interesting to us to keep transatlantic relations strong as ever, and also to keep each other company and hopefully keep you company at home too. Hello, Rook. Good to hear you again.
Hi, Scott Sword. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope that we're able to keep a lot of people company today. And, not to mention bolster those transatlantic relationships. We need to shore those up as much as we can.
Absolutely, especially all these troubling times and the like. I did actually see your president and my prime minister did actually meet up a few days ago, as of the time of recording.
Oh, boy.
It was a really strange situation where it was at his golf course. So the American president was hosting the British prime minister, but on British soil. I don't,
Very strange.
I don't think that's a good look for us. I don't think Keir Starmer negotiated that pretty well, but all right, I'll leave it to them. He should have made him go down to London, I think, but never mind. Never mind. I will.
Yeah. Leave it to them is right.
Yeah, exactly.
What a terrible state of the world. This podcast is for keeping people company. You come here to relax, right? We don't want to
Right,
bang
exactly.
you over the head with the garbage fire that is what's happening in the world right now.
Well, precise. Well, with that in mind, the background footage that we have is a very calming and relaxing scene. It's from a game that I've been playing on stream recently called Islands and Trains. As the title would suggest, you'd think there'd be multiple trains, but there isn't. But they're coming in an update. You only have one train right now. But basically, it's like, I don't know. Did you ever have I don't know what the American equivalent would be for European people. It'd be like the wooden train sets were called Brio. Well, that was the company at least, and also then you got the electric ones, which were Hornby. I don't know if either of them ring a bell. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like when you're a kid, you have like a train set of some description.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We don't. I mean, I know almost nothing about them, but we definitely have big models that produce trains and train cars and various sorts of varieties. The most famous ones are like electric.
Hmm.
Um, and I have a friend who's really into model trains, and he's got some track and some trains that he sets up every year for Christmas, which is pretty cool. And there's like a train exhibition that meets every year that he's taken me to once. He goes with his family every year. I've tagged along once, and it's really cool. Right? I enjoy like the idea of model trains as a hobby, but I don't actually want to go through the effort of putting them together. So I don't have any like personal experience playing with little model trains, but I am aware that that is a thing that people do, and I think it's a cool, charming, interesting hobby.
Oh, well, your friend sounds like a good egg. Yeah, so I don't know. In Spain, there's some exhibitions. I've been to one, but yeah, in the UK, there's quite a dedicated like community of people who build model trains. I don't know so much now with the newer generation, but there's definitely a certain older generation which would really indulge, especially the generation who are old enough to remember, especially the steam trains when they were still
Mm-hmm.
very much present in the UK. But now there's like the newer generation who do it with the diesel trains as well. So yeah, I had a point. God, that must be like 8, yeah, 9 years old, something like that, and I was asked, would you like electrics, like the racing cars, or would you like a train set? And I was like, well, that's just a no-brainer. Train set all the way. So I had like a little one. And I used to have like the wooden ones as well that had little magnets to stick all the rolling stock together. Then you'd push it around and stuff, and build
Nice.
all the different layouts. So yeah, so basically this is like this video game is like a nostalgia trip of that. It's got like the chill nature of Tiny Glade, with like sort of diorama builder, no, it's all completely sandbox, no resources, but you can build little train tracks, and you have a cute little train that drives around, and it has a cute whistle, and all this sort of thing. So that's what that is. So
Nice.
I spent probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 streams putting a little world together, and almost like in miniature Wonderland vein, if you
Yeah, I
remember
was gonna
that.
bring that up. I was gonna say we should like contrast that with the footage from Miniature Wonderland or however it's pronounced.
Yeah, I definitely not as my effort's definitely not as impressive as all that, but it was really good fun, and yeah, it's just it's like bringing one of those trade sets but to life on the computer. So the entire podcast is just going to be my little train going round the little group of islands I created. You'll see all the farmland and the town and the little sheep hiding in the forest and all this. So yeah,
Well, that sounds great.
nice and chill. So yeah, there you go. So that brings us back down to the calm
The level we
relaxation.
strive for. Yeah,
Exactly.
at keeping you company. Got to keep
Exactly.
the right vibe.
Yeah, yeah. So what's been up with in Rook's world since we last spoke? It hasn't been as long since we spoke. I think we've been quite good. It's maybe about 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's been pretty close, between 3 and 4 weeks maybe, but not as bad as we've been in the past. We've actually slipped one deadline, so
Mm,
that hasn't happened again.
that's
That's
true.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unrelated news, my work schedule has sort of settled back down. It was completely out of control for a good portion of the summer there, but it seems to be slowing back down again to normal, right? We went from totally out of control to in control at the moment. But of course, the nature of my work is sort of feast or famine, and I never quite know what I'm going to have when and how much is going to come at me at once. So we'll see exactly what ends up happening. But yeah, so it's been nice sort of feeling. It feels like I've just been slowly clawing back time to live my life.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Glad you got
So
through that tough patch, and now you can enjoy the summer a little bit as much as possible.
yes.
Have a more
So how have things been with you?
Fine. I can't believe it's the 30th of July. That's the day that we're recording this, by the way. So you can see we've recorded pretty close to the upload time. Yeah, I can't believe it's the end of July already. I guess we could probably we could break the news to the viewers. The main thing that's going on with me, I've said it on streams and stuff. We haven't actually mentioned it in the podcast yet, but fatherhood is impending for me. It is imminent.
Hooray!
Hooray! But that means that's a lot of organisation that has to get done, and we didn't do it during the year because we're both on the up until probably the end of June because we're both really busy with work. So then suddenly
Hmm.
we spent most of this month when I should have been doing other stuff related with career and work related things. We've just been getting the flat ready and building the crib and buying lots of nappies, or sorry, diapers as they would be for across the pond. And yeah, just where have the days gone? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, maybe this podcast might come out after she's born, or maybe the next time we chat a Rook, maybe I'll be a dad. I don't know. We have no idea.
Maybe.
We have no idea. We'll have to wait and see. Um,
Yeah. We're living in exciting times.
absolutely. So yeah, it's been busy, um, and also yeah, I've had to help Mrs. Scott Sword around the flat and stuff. So doing a lot more sort of chores, duty, and things, which obviously then eats away time as well. But I'm not complaining. I've had time to keep up with streaming and such and the like, and we're preparing for the League of Dracula and all this sort of exciting things. So yeah, it's been busy for different reasons, but I'm keeping myself more or less occupied, so that's good. The heat has not been as
Excellent.
the heat has not been as bad recently, thank goodness. Although you might hear some background noise because I'm having to keep the window open because it's still getting quite hot, especially in the office. I made the
Hmm.
mistake today of streaming for 5 hours this afternoon, so the office is boiling. So
Oh
that'll
wow.
teach me. So
Yeah.
if you hear the sounds of, I don't know, people shouting in the street or the street cleaners or whatever, I do apologise. I'll try and mute as much as possible. Ah, that's been us. I didn't see on the YouTube if there are any comments. I should have looked on Spotify if there are any comments. There might have been. If there's been a Spotify comment, I'm really sorry. I didn't look. That's terrible. I might quickly do it now as we're listening, or talking rather. But we've got a few things to talk about today. A little bit of follow up. I think because I was quite tired towards the end of the last podcast, and you said something, and there's only then when I listened back to it afterwards, I was like, gee whiz, my reaction to that was very subdued. The whole 1,000 books before, which grade was it?
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
Which I didn't make it. Sort
Oh,
of. So anyway, we can get into that in a minute. The thing that surprised me, right, was I brought that up as sort of a small side point to another thing that I wanted to say. And so when your reaction was relatively muted, I was like, oh, good, that's appropriate. And then I went and checked when the episode released, and it was in the title. And I was like, what are you putting that in the title for? I just mentioned that in passing, and you didn't even really react to it.
Because it was so shocking. I was like, I had to put that in the title. There's no way I can't. But it's something that was like, yeah, I should have really followed that up as more as I did. But then that means we're going to get another podcast out of it, most likely. I mean, the number itself is just incredible. My question was going to be, did you make it? And you've already said no. You did.
Well, yeah.
How close
So,
were you?
well, what happened was, right, my goal was 1,000 books by fifth grade. And what happened was I got like really close, and then I started fifth grade, and I was like, all right, well, what if I say by the time I finish elementary school, right, by the end of fifth grade? Because for me, I don't know what it's like overseas. I know what it's like in Japan. In Japan, you're in elementary school until sixth grade. Where I am in the United States, it's elementary school runs through fifth grade. But I also know, like, I'm friends with a number of people who are teachers, and depending on your local school district, like it can be broken up completely different, right? There are some people it's like, 1 through 3 is one school, and then 4 through 8 is another. And so there's all these different permutations. But for me, fifth grade was the end of elementary school. And I was like, all right, well, if I finish by the end of fifth grade, we'll call it good. And that I did make. I did make it to 1,000 books by the time I finished fifth grade.
You're gonna have to rein that back even more because fifth grade means very little to a British speaker.
Oh,
Is that 10 years old?
excellent. I don't know how old I was in fifth grade. I've never had to think about that. So I can explain in the context of the American school system. Our first, when we like first enter our first schooling experience, right? We have this thing called preschool,
Uh huh.
which is like that's not really the first like start, what we consider the start of elementary school, which is the first like sort of official school. Preschool is where you go. They'll like teach you lessons and have you doing activities, before you get to what's considered the more traditional school age. And so the regular elementary school starts with what we call kindergarten,
Mhm.
and think that's what 5 or 6 years old, somewhere around there.
Oh.
And then we get to first grade follows kindergarten, and then second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, right? And that's the end of elementary school.
So it's first grade. So if you're saying kindergarten is 5 and 6, so first grade is when you're 7.
Maybe. I'm going to look this up because I haven't had to think about this in a long time. Apologies, everyone. I know it sounds really silly of me to not know this, but
It's all very complicated.
yeah.
I'll have to tell you now the equivalent for Scotland, but I'll let you check first. 'Cause I was trying to work out how old you'd be, and I was like, well, I assume fifth grade is from 5 till 10, but I don't know. But still, I mean, even if you're 12 years old at the end of fifth grade, that's still a lot of books.
Yeah. Let's see. School age calculator. Enter state and date of birth to determine year of entry into kindergarten and high school.
Oh no.
This is how
So
apparently this is how disparate our school system is. Oh, this is crazy. Okay, but this is for like specifically, this isn't for how old are kids in each grade. This is something else. Age versus grade. Yeah, kindergarten is between 5 and 6 years old. I got it right. I feel so special. I was doubting myself. Yeah, fifth grade, 10 to 11 years old. So by the time I was 11 years old, I had read 1,000 books, and I do remember this from my childhood era. I specified that they were what we used to call chapter books, right? Because they have little kids books, right, where it's all just pictures and simple sentences and things, and aimed for very young children. And I wasn't going to count those. I love to read, but I wasn't going to count those books. I wanted them to be books that were divided into chapters and that were meant to be like longer reads, right? Not just something you'd read for a bedtime story. So,
but not on the
yep,
not on the
that
level
was
of Great Gatsby, I'm assuming.
no, not on that level either.
Okay, that's fine. Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, just kids books, but books with chapters.
okay.
Um, this is probably going to mean absolutely nothing to you, but there are certain like children's books series that are good examples to think of that would be like sort of where I started my journey with things like the Boxcar Children. And if you're from the States, that might, and you're listening, that might mean something to you. Uh, I imagine that's regional as well. Um, but yeah, there's certain like well-known kids series that, and they all tend to go in series, right? They're grouped around a theme. So when I was growing up, Goosebumps was another one. There was sort of a little bit of a rivalry, I think, between Goosebumps and another long-running kid series called Animorphs. And I never read Animorphs. I always wanted to get into them because they have really cool covers. But for whatever reason, like I would read the like quick little summaries and be like, I don't know if it, because that was like a true serial where in the sense that each book seemed to build off the last, and so it felt like I missed the start, and I was young enough that I didn't want to go back. Um, Whereas Goosebumps was fairly self-contained. But anyway, these are all probably neither one of those book series is particularly relevant to anyone who's a kid these days, but they were relevant for me.
I was going to say the irony. You say you didn't want to go back because now you are. I don't. We must have mentioned this on the podcast before that you're going through the Rebus novels, and you deliberately started at number 1, even though I told you that the author recommends Black and Blue as the starting point to read.
Yes. Well, this is the thing about me, right? Is I'm ever at war with my own impulses. There's a part of me that is very completionist, where it's like if I'm going to do a thing, I'm gonna do it from start to finish, and I'm gonna know everything about it. And then there's another part of me that's like, is that really worth the effort?
Oh my goodness, the two devils sitting on your shoulders.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
What's the meme phrasing? Inside me, there are two wolves.
Well, Goosebumps rings a bell. Actually, it wasn't that a TV series
Oh, really?
too.
Oh, it was. Yeah, they did make it into a TV series.
So I don't think I watched it because maybe I'm not a big horror fan, but also maybe because of the age I was when it was on British TV, I might have been a tad too young. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure. I'm gonna have to look into that. We have some. The equivalent in the UK, again, it might be regional, but the equivalent, at least the ones that we often read in school, would be Biff, Chip, and Kipper. I think if you ask people from the
Ah,
UK of a certain generation, they might know Biff, Chip, and Kipper, at least by name. Those were the books we had to read. But they were actually like part of the curriculum. But
okay.
again, it's a generational thing too. There'll be very specific books that a lot of kids of a certain age would read. There's Mog, that was another one that was really famous when I was a kid. But then maybe now for younger kids, you got like the Gruffalo and these sort of things. They're like really famous for kids now, or maybe now that's too old. Maybe it's something else. Where someone of my age, I never read the Gruffalo.
Aha.
So
Do you read Roald Dahl?
I did I ever read any Roald Dahl? I don't remember. I definitely did watch a couple. They did like some film adaptations. The one I
Yes.
remember in particular was James and the Giant Peach.
Yes.
But that
I
was
loved that book and movie. I think that was one of the first times when I experienced like an adaptation and was like, "This is great!"
uh,
Right?
the
Uh,
the adaptation is the one where it's like animated, right?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
a claymation. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I've seen that one. I'm trying to think. I'll have to
Yeah,
look
that's the one I'm talking about. Now, I was a kid. I don't know. I don't know how great my judgment was back in the day, but I just remember thinking, "Wow, it's a great book and it's a great movie. How did they do that?"
I mean, I've just seen on the Wikipedia. I haven't seen it for years, by the way, but I've just seen in the Wikipedia page that Tim Burton produced it. That makes a lot of sense
Yeah, it does.
based upon like the styling of it. It's very like Nightmare Before Christmas kind of
Hmm.
vibes, right?
Yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look up. Let me look up Roald Dahl's. The one now. Here's one I didn't really read, and I know it's probably Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the new one, newer one
Hmm.
with Johnny Depp.
Hmm.
Only about a week ago, actually.
Oh
But
wow.
I think that was actually the first time I had seen that film. I've seen the old one with Gene Wilder.
I
Uh,
was gonna say it doesn't surprise me that you hadn't seen the new one before. Nobody cares about the new.
oh,
Maybe some
totally.
people do. I don't care about the new one.
Based upon my age, I would be more likely to have seen the newer one. But no,
I
I've
guess.
seen the old one. Oh, Matilda,
But
of
the old one is
course.
such a classic.
Yeah, I watched it a long, long, long time ago. Matilda, yeah, I've seen the film loads of times. I had that on tape as a kid.
Yeah,
Um,
Matilda was one of my favorites.
I mean, as a book reader, that was that would have been perfect for you. Um,
Oh,
but the
I
one,
had to be a little bit. I remember that was one of the first times where I was like, I have to be careful because this feels a little self indulgent, right? The idea that reading a bunch gives you like superpowers. I was like, I'm really drawn to this fantasy, but at the same time, I feel like I'm patting myself on the back, right? It's like, well, of course, the big reader in this book is going to develop like telekinesis and like super mental powers, right? It's like, mm, I'm drawn to that fantasy, but should I be? Right? It was one of the first times I remember having that sort of conflicted set of feelings.
um, the one I think that is very famous in the States is Dr. Seuss, right?
Oh yes,
Um,
yeah, but
I,
Dr. Seuss isn't chapter books.
no, but I mean in terms of like children literature, which is
Yes.
really famous, I have read none of his books. Maybe a couple,
Ah.
but never sufficiently enough for me to have it in my brain as a memory. Like James the Giant Peach, I remember that watching that film quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we've mentioned it, and Matilda, absolutely. I don't know why I never read the books. Maybe just, I mean, they must be easy to find in the UK, but maybe just the ones I read. Again, I don't know if they're famous in the States. There's a series called The Famous Five,
I've never heard of them.
about four kids who related and their dog who go off on sort of mystery adventures, and they normally uncover some sort of criminal activity and these sort of things when they're on their holidays. Uh,
I've read a lot of books in that vein, but I have not heard of the Famous Five.
yeah, I think it's from the Victorian era. The writer's Enid Blyton. And
Hmm.
it's definitely her most famous series, and they made like TV shows of it. Was it or maybe it's not. Oh no, it's not as old as I thought it was. Well, she was born in 1897. I don't know when. Oh, she was. Oh, she wrote Noddy. Oh my goodness, this is like a throwback now. That was a thing I saw on TV when I was even younger. But then she made another one called The Secret Seven, where it's more about a secret
Oh.
club of friends, if I remember rightly, rather than the Famous Five is probably one of the most famous ones. When did the first one? Oh, 1942, 1962. But I don't know if she wrote them in the modern day that she was writing them, if they were like
Right.
contemporary of the time, or if she wrote them a little bit back in the past. I need to look at the sort of the tech. I need to read them again and see what technology is involved, and I might be able to date it. Because I don't know if there are any dates written in the books at all. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
So those are the ones that I kind of read. I had like pretty much all of the Famous Five, and then in terms of comics, Tintin.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Love reading those. But yeah, I mean, and obviously, I know Dr. Seuss is aimed at like a younger audience, but yeah, that just
Mm-hmm.
never ever came across my radar. I know that they've got a couple of film adaptations, but that was just
Yeah.
something I never read. Yeah.
The wordplay in Dr. Seuss is pretty incredible. I will say, having a lot of acquaintances who are parents, you can definitely tell like a Dr. Seuss book versus any other type of kids book, just because of the rhythm and the rhyme and the level of wordplay on display in them. It's pretty impressive.
Hmm. Well, I'll have to see. Maybe it might be something I'll pick up as a new
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
father.
I remember sitting down. I think it was one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish, and I could not read that book aloud from start to finish. I was like, this is too tongue twistery. This is incredible.
I'll have to try and maybe you can try and recite it on the podcast and see how you do.
No, I don't know. I don't know how they would feel about me reading out copyrighted works if it's still copyrighted. It's
Oh,
pretty
that's
old.
true. Oh, yeah, it's a good question actually. Well, yeah, that was 1960. Maybe it's past copyright by now. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just interesting, like how across, like even with the same language, right? The books that we were exposed to in the curriculum and
Hmm.
outside the curriculum are just so different.
Oh
Or
yeah.
even thinking about TV shows. I mean, I've had this conversation with my wife loads of times where You know, I was like, what cartoons did you watch as a kid? And she'd start naming all these cartoons. I'll be like, nah, none of, and a lot of them were international cartoons, but they never made their way over to the UK, or they weren't. I wasn't exposed to them. It's
Pretty
just,
wild.
yeah. Whereas I think maybe now there's more sort of maybe overlap between American and British. Uh,
Maybe?
a little bit.
I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it.
Well, I remember watching a lot of the
Big
old.
movies.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like the more like sort of the old MGM cartoons, like Tom and Jerry, and
Okay.
like
I
what's it,
see.
Hannah and Barbara, like Scooby
Hanna
Doo.
Barbera. Yeah, but they don't make those anymore. Nobody watches those these days.
Are they not
So
popular?
depressing to me to think of because Looney Tunes is like my
Oh,
childhood.
of course, yeah.
And there are so many like Looney Tunes, Hanna-Barbera. Like I've always loved animation, right? So I've been big into anime, but a lot of that sort of grew out of my existing love for animation and cartoons like Tom and Jerry, all those sorts of things.
Hmm.
And they were always on TV when I was growing up. And now, like, first of all, kids aren't even watching TV, but even if they were, they're not on there anymore, right? So I don't really think if I were to try and talk to like my nieces and my nephews, like I don't think they would recognize, oh, like it's this Looney Tunes thing. And it's funny because it's to me, it's just like part of my part of the way I engage with the world. Like I'm not sure how much you have or haven't been following along with the old hunt, but on at least two occasions that I can think of, I've made allusions to Looney Tunes because it's just how I like process things,
Hmm.
and it's something that I don't think kids in the States these days would recognize. It's an older
Wow.
person thing, right? The world is changing.
Oh wow. I mean, I know they've done like with certain cartoons. I don't know about Scooby Doo, but like Tom and Jerry, they've done like updated versions. Maybe
Yeah.
they're still on the air, but maybe not.
Well,
I
the
don't
thing is,
know.
right on the air, right? I've heard about them releasing new batches of Looney Tunes episodes and things onto streaming services,
Hmm.
but have you heard about those before? Because like I hadn't, right? Like they were basically impossible to miss when I was growing up, and now it's very easy to miss them. I think is the point. And if what kid is going to know to look for them if they have to seek them out?
Hmm. Right. Not like when we were kids. I must be the same in the States, right? Where there was like a dedicated kids program, which may be like an hour or two
Mm-hmm.
hours long, like after school or over breakfast time or
Yep.
something. And they would have a selection of cartoons or shows that they would show. So every kid was
Mm-hmm.
watching the exact same stuff. We'd all go home at night and we'd all watch. I mean, the things like the Scooby Doo and Tom and Jerry and that were not shown on British like BBC and ITV,
Mm-hmm.
but they would show. I don't know. I'm trying to think what ones they would show. I'm trying to think now. I mean, it's not. It was not shown inside the kids' hour, but there was always Simpsons on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was always on like 6 o'clock every weekday night. So when we were, especially as teenagers, or maybe a little bit younger than that, we'd all go home and all watch The Simpsons, or something of that ilk. I need to think now. Actually, I can't remember what. Because there was also then, I guess, because you got like terrestrial TV and satellite TV. On the satellite TV, there were then extra kids channels, and on there they would just show loops of Tom and Jerry and Scooby Doo and the Flintstones and Looney Tunes like all day.
Right.
And I was just lucky. I had my mum was quite a big fan of Tom and Jerry. From such
Mm-hmm.
a weird way to know about it. She used to work at a TV and audio store doing like the accounts work and things, but they don't have like the old like all the stores do with all the TVs on, showing
Mm-hmm.
different shows to promote
Yeah.
the TVs and that. And often during her break, she would go and have a look if they had a Tom and Jerry episode on. She would just she would just watch it during her break time. So she'd tell me about Tom and Jerry, and then I got into that when I was younger. So I guess I was always looking at that channel in particular. So that's how I got exposed to a lot of the American cartoons.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I think I'm trying to remember. There were some things like Johnny Bravo and things which were definitely, I think, shown on mainstream TV. I think it's been
That
quite a while
surprises me.
now, or maybe that was on Cartoon Network channel. This now I'm probably
Yeah, Cartoon
all
Network.
all of these things are in my
Yeah.
memory bank, but I'm trying to work out exactly when I saw them and what channel everything was on. But I don't know what do kids watch these days. Then I don't know. It's
In my experience, they my nieces like flip through YouTube Shorts constantly.
oh, okay. But are they slightly older then? I guess then they're a little bit more
Yeah,
independent.
they're not. Yeah, they're getting into the point where they're like early teens essentially. So,
Ah, okay. So yeah, they're seeking their
but
own
even
entertainment.
even when they were younger, right? It was they were on YouTube Kids. Right? I think most kids spend a lot of their time on YouTube these days.
Right. Interesting. I know over here, and I think in the UK it's the same. One TV show that's really popular is Bluey. I don't know if you've heard about
Yeah,
Bluey.
I was gonna bring that up as you started talking. I was like, there is Bluey, which has sort of taken over.
Yeah, that show's just become it's just exploded over the last maybe 3 years. I think it's just Bluey's everywhere now.
Yeah, it's gonna be a whole new generation, right? Kids who are gonna understand Bluey references, and then that's gonna eventually go away, and
Right.
their kids won't understand them, just like they don't understand our Looney Tunes.
I don't know, even the, like the old Disney films and that. Are kids watching those old, Disney princess films or like I grew up on Pixar. We talked about this before, right? My childhood was
Hmm.
Bugs and Toy Story, or Bugs Life rather, and Toy Story and all this sort of stuff. And
In
uh,
my experience, Disney is really, really good at marketing itself to kids, and like that's one thing where it's like, yeah, my nieces like they know the Disney movies, and
mm,
they've all got they're like because from a young age it's like you've got the Disney toys and it's like which one's your favorite princess, so you have to know all the princesses. Maybe you haven't seen the movie but you know the character,
right.
right? And I remember one of my friends, they were out and about with their kid, and they the kid like saw something and pointed and was like Mickey, and they were astonished because as far as they were aware, they had done nothing to tell their kid about Disney or Mickey Mouse at all. It's just so pervasive
Right.
that
Mickey's everywhere.
their like 3 4 year old was able to spontaneously be like it's Mickey Mouse.
And just knows it. Yeah. I say that as a joke. I'm
Yeah.
looking over at the crib that I've built, and lying inside it, amongst some other soft toys, is a Mickey Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difference is like my wife and I are going to be quite keen to show our daughter the shows that on films that we grew up with because we want to convey to her our. I mean, even though Disney is not Spanish, I want to. I'm not. I'm not thinking it is or anything, but that's what my wife grew up on, and I grew up on Pixar. We want to show her those things, as well
Mm-hmm.
as then the Catalan cartoons and all this sort of thing. So we have like that shared sort of experience. So yeah, I guess now, especially with Disney, they're going through a phase at the moment where they're doing quite a lot of re-releases of old, like they did like the
Yes.
updated Lion King, the updated what was the other one I watched? Oh, it's Snow White and
Mm-hmm.
Beauty and the Beast, like the live action versions and
Right.
things. So that's then bringing those films to a whole new audience.
Exactly.
I don't.
Yeah.
Are any kids sitting, like new kids now, sitting down and watching the old, you know, Snow White cartoon from was it 1950s or whatever that was made?
Yeah. I don't know. 1940s, I think, for that one. Snow
Oh,
White.
30,
That was the first one.
37, even older.
37. There you
It's
go.
very
Yep. Even
old.
older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they sitting and watching all that? Maybe not. Maybe they haven't seen it. But again, as you said, the character, they would instantly look at it and go, oh, that's Snow White.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, every generation's the same, but it's yeah, it's a different world. We're old, Arukama. Yeah,
Yep. It's
we're
true.
old.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
This is a concept I've talked about with Strider, but I enjoy the process of getting older. I've enjoyed it so far, and I think it's fascinating. And so the way that I've tried to sort of reframe it for myself is thinking of it as now I'm in my wizarding years because in my mind, right, the fantasy of a wizard, and I mean this is reflective of my tastes and interests, right? Because I think wizards are cool. Not everybody thinks that, but to my mind, the fantasy of a wizard is someone who like diligently works and accumulates experience and information, and they really come into their own when they're able to leverage that experience and information into power. And so for me, that's sort of like, okay, I've hit this point where I've been building up and like accumulating experiences and information from all these different aspects of my life as long as I've been alive. And as I've gotten to the point now where I'm getting older, it's like, well, now I've developed all these techniques, right, that are like my wizard spells. And there is power that comes with that. And so I think that's sort of my way to reframe that idea a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of currency to the idea that as you get old, you sort of become useless in our modern culture, and values youth pretty highly. And this isn't to say that it's bad being young. Obviously, there's good things about being young, but I think there's also good things about being old, and those values don't tend to get trumpeted quite as loudly as the others.
Is that your comeback now? If your nieces say to you that you're old, you're like, no, I'm a wizard. They'll just be like, yeah,
That would
whatever.
be fun. I should try that sometime and see what they say.
I'll just see. I can imagine the eye rolls really. Yeah, whatever, uncle.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I say it to, I reframe the argument for myself. I don't, and maybe other people who are old enough to think, oh, that's a good way of thinking of it. Not to people who don't care or don't know, or like, I'm not going to go up to someone who thinks wizards are dumb and be like, welcome to your wizarding years, right? Like, I don't think they would appreciate that. Also, I feel like the other thing to do is you have to accept things as they are, right? So even as I try to reframe this, I'm not going to deny that I'm old.
No.
I'm just going to try and change a little bit what that means, right? I remember the elder secrets of Looney Tunes.
And that is wisdom that the young generation will never have.
That's right. I mean, it's there if they want to find it, but who's got time for that? They've got Bluey.
And YouTube Shorts.
And YouTube Shorts. Yeah, whatever people are shoveling out onto that platform.
I dread to think. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So yeah. Hopefully our daughter will be brought up as a really strange hybrid of 21st century meets 90s and further back.
Hopefully.
Very strange hybrid baby. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what does and doesn't endure across generations.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be different to an extent for each generation, right? What do they value from the previous generation, and what are they going to make their own?
Right. I was thinking about it just now.
And how much is going to be just straight new stuff? Go ahead.
Right. I don't know. I feel the problem is maybe TV and film ages worse. I was going to say, like, comparing it to music. Maybe music is more ageless? Or does it's more enduring? I'm not quite. Maybe because
I think it's more what you're into personally, because I mean there are some things that I think are big enough for music, but I think this is maybe true for everything, right? There are certain things that are big enough that it's hard to avoid them. They're just sort of cultural monoliths. But there are other things where it's like, okay, yeah, if you're a music fan, you're going to know all of these songs going back, and you're going to care about the history and the provenance of all these things. And if you're a musician, you're going to mine the past and make all these musical references. And then if people like your music, maybe they're going to get that reference and go back, right? But I don't think... I don't know. I'm not convinced that it's something special about music that keeps it relevant so much, maybe, and I could be wrong about this. This is just me on the moment speculating. I sort of think because you're really into music, you care about its history. I care about books, so I care about like literary classics. How many people are out there caring about literary classics, right? I love Jane Austen, but actually Jane Austen is enduringly popular. Maybe I picked a bad example. I care a lot about
period dramas are very much in at the moment.
Yeah, I care a lot about so like I've read Le Mort d'Arthur or whatever, not in French but in Old English, right? I took a class on how to understand the Middle English that it was written in, not Old English, Middle English, because Old English destroyed me. Middle English I was able to follow along with. It's much easier. And I took a class on just sort of Middle English, and I took a class on Arthurian legends, and specifically that book. And so I was able to like combine them all together, and I care about that a lot. I don't think a lot of other people care about that. Even if they care about Arthurian myths, they care about the more recent stuff.
Right. But I feel the way I was trying to frame it a little bit more. I mean, I agree with you. I think the way that people I'd frame it would be if you're showing someone a piece of media for the first time. I feel, especially music, it's maybe harder to date. Whereas films, because they've got that visual aspect with them, not only the quality of the image, but also the technology that is then visible inside the characters or that portraying the action. You can instantly date the film a little bit, unless there's something that's set back in a time period that's different to when it was filmed. Which I think maybe might put a lot of people off from going back onto old media, unless there's somebody who's very, very interested in older media. If you're trying to show like the new generation a film and they see that the technology is different, or like what we used to do when we had like educational videos shown to us in school, and they're always from the 90s, and you could always tell because they had really everyone who was getting interviewed had massive glasses on, which obviously was not the style of the mid 2000s. So we'd always laugh at these videos. We can instantly say, oh, this is a really old thing. If you're trying to get a new generation interested in something, if they see it's something that's in black and white or it looks really old-fashioned, they'll be like, oh, I don't want to see this. This doesn't look from my time. Whereas music is maybe more, it lacks that visual aspect, so it's maybe harder to date. There's maybe that
Yeah,
it might.
I guess that's true, right?
enjoyable.
It doesn't have quite as many like signifiers to show that it's old necessarily. Yeah.
Books would be, well, I guess because a lot of there is the visual aspect, but it's with the imagination. So um,
Yeah,
it's a
but
bit
the way
different.
that people use language changes over time.
That's true.
So, I mean, you can sit down and, I mean, Shakespeare is an obvious example, right? You go back that far, and it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's happened? Why is everyone talking strange? I can barely understand this. I need the notes. But you can even with Jane Austen, right? It's the sort of thing where you can read it and you can understand it if you know modern English, but you can feel the age of the language,
Right.
right? You can just the way that people express themselves and the way that Jane Austen writes, it's different enough that it's like, yeah, the language has changed.
Yeah. It's not.
And
It's not written this time. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and even if you don't necessarily need notes for like every single word, I've been reading because I've been reading the annotated versions of the Jane Austen novels lately. There are occasionally like words that I just never would have gotten from context. Most of the time, I can get the strange words from context, but there are some times when it's like, okay, um, this meaning I just never would have guessed, right? Um, so like quiz used to be like a curiosity in the sense of like an oddity that draws your attention. So there's like this one passage in I think it was Northanger Abbey where they talk about like, oh, they went around and they laughed at all the quizzes, and
Huh?
I needed a note to be like, what do you mean they laughed at all the quizzes? And it was like they laughed at all the sort of eccentric looking people who were out and about.
Ah.
Um, in the resort town of Bath. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they could also use it as a verb in the sense like, why are you quizzing me? And it doesn't mean like, why are you asking me a question the way it would mean today? It means like, why are you teasing me?
Ah. That's neat.
And so you can go ahead.
I was gonna say that's really neat. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so every now and then you run across like little nuggets like that. And sometimes it's like, even if you don't have the note right, it's like, oh, I wonder that you would say that. It's like, okay, I know what that means, but that's not how we would talk today. That's an older sense of the word wonder, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So the language does give you those sorts of clues. So I think you're right, right? Like as much as I think there is something to the idea that the more modern something can appear, even if it is older, the easier it is to get into if you're not from that same time period.
Right.
But I do think I think actually, film probably has one of the hardest times with this because it's changed so much over time.
Mm-hmm. Think about
And I
like
think there's probably more indicators of age on films than maybe any other media that I can think of.
right technologically in terms of the actual film production, going from black and white to color, silent, not silent, and then the actual
Hmm.
picture quality, and then even from if it's animation or live action, and then once you actually see what is actually being filmed, the setting, architecture, clothing, all the fashion,
Yep. Acting
hairstyles,
style.
acting
Yep.
style, the actual also then the type of actor. Like you talk about the classic Hollywood actors from that
Hmm.
era. They all had a very specific look about them, which is not the
Yep.
same as now. Again, I think it's something to do with black and white images. It does something, and it changes the way that people look. They look almost more elegant. And
Well, it's not just the black and white, right? It's also this. That's what I was sort of getting at with the styles of acting, right? It was everyone was trying to do these very precise motions that were meant to be signifiers of different states and things, and try and also just come across as more stately. And then you also had a lot of people who were used to acting for the stage, and they weren't necessarily used to acting for cameras. So they would act in ways that would make sense if the audience is, 100 feet back or whatever from a stage, where the camera could be like right up on their face, and that's something that it took time for people to adjust to,
mm-hmm.
the different style of acting. And then you have the whole idea of the method, right, coming in and being like, no, you should be thinking about what this character would be thinking about. You want to immerse yourself in the reality of the character, right? You don't want to be relying on these rote motions that you're learning. You want to just act as natural as you can by embodying that character. And that's a whole shift in the predominant acting style, where it used to be, I think they used to call it like mannered or something like that. And it shifts over largely to the idea of the method as time goes on.
There you go.
So that whole presentation is like completely changed. And of course, there's the black and white stuff, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
a huge signifier right there. Does it or doesn't it have sound, right? Like you were saying, there's all these different ways in which it's CGI, right? We didn't even bring that up. That's a tremendous change in very recent history.
Mm-hmm.
And so the all the production methods just keep changing in a way that I think makes film dateable in a way that not a lot of other media are. Because sound technology, yeah, if you go back far enough, the sound technology is going to be pretty poor. And you can tell, right? If you're really into jazz, you've probably heard a lot of recordings that are not high fidelity. You got a lot of static in the sound from the American jazz classics, and so like it's not like it's not there, but very quickly you hit a point where the audio recording technology was advanced enough that it's basically indistinguishable from what we have today.
Yeah, yeah, and also maybe.
And then books, right? Like the language changes, but it changes over the course of like hundreds of years, right?
But yeah, but I guess there's also like if you're comparing, if you're thinking about, I don't know, music and film might be fairly similar, but the range of like the time period of possible literature that you can consume is way wider than it is for
Yeah,
music, where we're talking about hundreds of years rather than decades. So
right.
you're gonna see that shift because obviously the shift has occurred. More shifts would have happened in that time period rather than just. I mean, I know there's a big change in the music genres for the 50 years, but unless you've got a knowledge of that history, it's hard to place. Whereas you could pick up
Right.
like a book from 500 years ago, or Shakespeare, or even Jane Austen, as we're talking about, and then maybe you don't know why it feels old. You still know, oh yeah, this feels old. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if music would have quite the same effect. Maybe it would. Maybe I'm just, I
Well, depending on the song, right?
yeah,
Like depending on what they're singing about. And this is something that comes up in TV and movies and books as well. This is like universal, right? The time period being depicted as contemporary,
mm,
things have changed,
yeah,
right? So I remember, let's go to the Rebus books, for instance, because I've been reading these recently, and this was something that really struck me, was the early books, it was like, okay, um, how do I make a call? I need to ask someone to use their phone.
right,
And then it's like, oh, like it becomes a plot point in one of the early books that Rebus ends up sort of stealing a car. He like commandeers it, and it's got a car phone,
right,
and then, next thing you know, he's got a mobile, and pretty soon, I'm waiting. I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm waiting for the point where he's just got an iPhone, right? Or maybe not. It's just a generic smartphone of some kind.
Rebus won't have an
And
iPhone. He's a Luddite. He won't have that.
I don't know. I don't know.
He's
hard to avoid.
He's a status quo man. He doesn't embrace change.
Yeah, but change happens to him sometimes.
Well, that's true.
He's already embraced a cell phone, right? So
true.
as far as I know.
That's true.
And what are some of the other things? Like just the presence of computers, right?
Right.
It becomes a plot point in one of the early books that it's like we're moving from paper to computer. Mm-hmm. And so it's just all these different things where, okay, how you are depicting society and the way that it works has just shifted over time. Mm-hmm. So there are certain song lyrics. I think I was maybe watching a Rick Beato video on this actually, where they were talking about like, do people still care about this song where they're referencing like, I want to call you, but I don't have a dime, right? Because the idea that payphones are gone.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's like cultural references, right? It's not even like technological. Mm-hmm. The one I really struggle with a lot of the time is when you have comedies, which are set in certain time periods, and they make references to certain people or certain events. Or they might make a reference to another TV show. And if I'm not from that era, or unless I have a more extensive knowledge of that time period, I don't know what they're talking about. Whereas the audience of the time who are watching it, they do know, because they grew up with that. They know what the reference is. And I guess that's the other things. The one in particular I'm thinking of is Only Fools and Horses, which I love that sitcom. But that's one that's going to age, as good as the comedy is, though the jokes are going to age, or some of them at least will age worse, just because the newer generation, I don't know some of the references, so then the next generation won't have a clue what those references, so far removed from what they're familiar with.
Right.
Fortunately, the comedy, I think, is good enough that it'll still hold up with time, but still people will lose interest.
But it changes.
Yeah. So that's one thing that like. So one of the things that I wanted to mention when we're thinking of following up with books and things is sort of my history of reading. It has been a history of like ever expanding into genres that I previously like kept myself from. So when I was a kid, I was like, who would want to read adult fiction? Because all those books, it takes forever to get to the point, right? And it's drowning in all this like symbology, and who cares about all that stuff? Just give me your like plot, I want to read these books. Of course, I was saying that as a kid because I was the target audience for kids' books, right? I didn't understand what was cool about books aimed at an older audience because I wasn't old enough to appreciate them. So that one I just sort of naturally grew into. But I do remember hitting a point where it was like, oh, now I understand why all these things, are written for adults. It's because it's actually really interesting, and you can go very deep into symbolism and sort of underlying meanings, or not even if you don't want to go that far, right? You can get very into the idea of character as opposed to plot, and that's something that tends to come out a little bit more in adult fiction as opposed to children's fiction. Right. I think you can definitely get children's fiction that focuses a lot on characters, but I think it's just a richer experience in general. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say as you move to fiction aimed more at adults. I mean, it makes sense. Like the books are longer, right? So you just naturally got more space where you can delve into more character-related transitions or development and all this sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. And then it was like, okay, well, I like adult contemporary fiction, but why would anyone get into the classics? They're all so boring and stuffy, and this is where I'm going to loop back around a little bit. Like all the ones that are like supposed to be funny aren't funny anymore. And I've never been able to get into Gulliver's Travels, for instance, because it's satire, and maybe it's brilliant satire, but it's all satirizing that I don't understand. So it's all going over my head. It's like, what's the point of this, right? You need to take a class or read another book alongside it in order to really understand what's happening in Gulliver's Travels. And I've never had that experience. I just had the experience of, as a kid, being like, oh, everyone says Gulliver's Travels is funny. I'm going to read it. this isn't funny. This is incomprehensible. What a garbage book, right? Like it's probably right. It's not a garbage book, I'm sure, right? I'm sure if I were to actually sit down now and invest the time to learn what was going on, I would appreciate it. But back when I gave it a try, boy, did I bounce off that book. And so I just had this idea in my head that, classics are stuffy and you have to read other books to even understand what they're going on about or take a class. And that's not what I want to read for pleasure. And then I got assigned, actually, this is my typical above and beyond thing, actually, because what happened was we were assigned in my high school British literature class. We had a number of different authors that we could pick from, and the assignment was pick one of these authors' works and sort of do your own analysis of it, like read it on your own and go through and come up with like not just a synopsis, but do like a presentation of what the author's concerns were, what the themes are, all the sort of literary analysis stuff. And I was like, oh, so this is essentially a list of a lot of really like good British authors, and I can just use this and read however many of these books I feel like. And so I went, and of course, the very first one was Jane Austen, right? Because her last name starts with an A. So she was right at the top of the list. And I opened Pride and Prejudice, read the first sentence, and just burst out laughing. And then I kept reading and continued to laugh. And it was like, not only is this a classic, it is the opposite of stuffy. It is actually really funny and quite enjoyable. And that like opened up an entire world. I did not, by the way, choose Jane Austen for my like project report because I wanted to keep that separate for pleasure, right? I wanted to do my own reading for my own fun time and not have to write a report on it. So I picked some other book that I didn't end up liking very much, ironically, to do as my like book report assignment. But then I went through and I just read a bunch of classics. And I was like, I'm just going to go and pick different authors and see which ones I like. And I would like be like, okay, there's a short story collection by this author. Let's see how I like them. Oh, I liked that. I'm going to go buy some of their famous novels. Or, I've got a short story collection by this author. I didn't really like it. Maybe I'll wait on this one. Right. And so that sort of opened up another world to me in terms of what I was willing to read. And then the next transition happened when it was like, okay, I'm pretty much happy reading anything fictional, but nonfiction? Why would I want to read nonfiction? And when I was living in Japan, I got really into a podcast, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, and sort of opened my eyes to the idea that history could be an interesting subject. And I was like, wow, it's nonfiction, but like a lot of the fiction that I like, which is a lot of fantasy, sort of is a version of history, except it's all set in a fantasy world. So what would I think about like these crazy like political moves and events, like if you took the fantasy out of it, but you knew it was all real? And that got me interested in reading history. And from there, I just sort of branched out into all sorts of nonfiction. And that was probably the latest, like if I was to think of it as like a major expansion, major explosion in my reading interest, right? That was sort of the last wall to fall. And it got actually to the point where I was so into reading nonfiction, I hadn't read an actual fiction book in years. And I was like, why would I ever go back to reading fiction? It turned around so completely. And then it got to the point where it was like, I should actively, because I used to love reading fiction, I should like revisit some of my favorites. And that's sort of bringing me, that's the path along which I've eventually come to where I am now, where now I've been making an effort to reconnect with some of my favorite works in the past. And that's also sort of pushed me back into enjoying fiction of all sorts. And so now I'll read whatever, essentially.
It's just basically the short summary of all that was every time a rook questions something about why something should exist or why he should consume it, he then consumes it. and ends up liking it. That's just basically what's going on. Every time, from now on, you need to take this into your further wizarding years. Every time you question something, you're going to end up liking it.
Well, the key, right? This is, I think, the real spell to go with the analogy there. uh, what you need to do is you need to find the way in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't just be any given thing, any given exposure. You need to find a way that you can connect with the material that thus far you have been unable to connect with, right? Gulliver's Travels was never going to draw me in. I needed Jane Austen,
Hmm.
right? And I could potentially, because I like to learn. This is one of the things I discovered about myself, basically in college. I like to learn. Nonfiction is a great way to just continue learning, right? You continue teaching yourself stuff all the time. And once I had the bridge of, okay, history will allow me to learn and also like tell me stories about the real world, that's great, right? And so I got into books in that sense, and that opened up nonfiction more generally, right? So the key is how you find that way to connect the thing that you haven't been able to connect with. And that's what can open those doorways for you. And I'm sure it's the same, right? Because I wanted to ask you about this, right? Because the last time we were talking mostly about, under the guise of the joy of vinyl, we were talking about sort of the nature of actively enjoying the things that you are listening to or otherwise experiencing as you're paying attention to media. And so I wanted to ask, like, musically, right? Have there been doors that were closed to you at certain points in your life where it was like you get that in, and all of a sudden your tastes expand?
Yeah, definitely. Um, in terms of especially specific bands, maybe rather more than genres. Of like, I can think maybe if we're thinking about music that has guttural vocals or harsh vocals, the likes
Mm-hmm.
of the Opeth and things from the Desert Island Discs.
Right.
Again, you need a bit of an in, so I couldn't jump to that immediately. I had to slowly work my way up to heavier music, and then eventually you just take that leap over. I can definitely think of very specific bands in particular, which I listened to the first time, and I was like, nope, 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 I'm not into this. The two in particular I can think of, especially one of that sort of ilk of really heavy music, is Gojira, who
Mm-hmm.
ended up, they were the band that opened, well, they were part of the opening ceremony for the Paris Olympics last summer.
Yeah, I remember you sent me that video.
I can't remember what the very first song was that I listened to them of theirs, but I do remember the time going, nope, I don't like it, don't like it, nope, 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 this is not for me. And then several months must have passed, or maybe more than that, more time must have passed, and then just it was more. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you have to hear them in the right context. In this case, for me, it was they were going to go and do a gig with Alter Bridge. The first time I was going to see Alter Bridge live after so
Mm-hmm.
long. Um, they were going to do a tour with three other bands, and Gojira were on the bill. And I thought to myself, I was not, I was never. There were some people who were really sort of picky, and they would say, "Oh, well, I'm only going to go to the gig to see this one band, and I won't turn up for the
Mm-hmm.
others." But I'm very much, I'm also a bit stingy. I like to get my money's worth. So if I've paid for a ticket, I'm seeing the whole damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, right, we're gonna have to see Gojira live. We're gonna have to listen to them. So I remember going in. This is during one of my summer breaks from uni, but I can't remember exactly what year I was in. If I was still an undergrad, I must have still been an undergrad. If I work back in terms of dates, I could probably work it out, but it's not really important. Um, and I remember just going to the music shop and seeing a couple of the CDs. I can't remember who I was with. I might have been up north visiting my mum, so she might have just been with me. I can't remember. And I just picked out the two CDs. And I literally just said to her, "Which one should I get?" Because I literally didn't know what I should do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, right, let's do it like the old-fashioned way. We'll base it on the album cover. Which album cover do you think is better? And the one
Mm-hmm.
she said was the Enfant Sauvage. It's like, right, I'm taking Enfant Sauvage home. So I remember that time I had like a little alarm clock which had an iPod dock. Again, I'm aging myself because I had my iPod. So I immediately ripped all the CD music onto my iPod, and when I was going to sleep that night, I put the iPod into the dock. I was listening to it, and I remember when the first song kicked in, I was like, "Holy shit!" And I just didn't. I don't think I. It took me a long time to go to sleep because I listened to the whole album. It was awesome. So
Wow.
you just needed that extra few months or however long it was between me hearing I think the song I did listen to was actually on that album. But it's just I must have listened to it at the wrong time. I was not in the frame of mind for it or whatever it was, and I wasn't ready. But then I was. Same with Nightwish, really famous band. But I think I heard one of their songs on a promotional CD, I think, in one of the UK rock or metal magazines.
Hmm.
And again, I listened to it, and it didn't really grab me. But then I got more interested in them later on. Again, I think they did an album that had more sort of a scientific theme. They actually did an album a couple of years ago, or a few years ago now at this point, called Human Nature, and they did sort of an instrumental second disc. I want to say I'm going to look this up now to make sure I get it right. But there's references in there to um, I want to say Pale Blue Dot, but is that right? Is it Pale Blue Dot? Because I'm mixing it up with two other bands who've done stuff with Pale Blue Dot. Please tell me that's right, or it's something else. Oh my god, this is terrible. This is why you don't do this on the spot, people.
How old are
Uh,
you when you go into first grade?
that I know. Well, we call it P1 in Scotland, and you're
Ooh.
5. Well, I was 5. You're between 4 and 5, depending on where your birthday falls. But I was 5. I was 5 when I started P1, and then when you got to secondary school, because we don't have middle school, we only have primary school and secondary school. So it's very easy in at least in Scotland. If you're in primary school, it's P, and then you say the number. P1 starts
Ah.
at 5 generally. Some people were 4, but you are 5 when you start or you're during that first year. So P1 is 5, and then you start S1, first year of secondary school, when you're 12. And it goes up P1, P2, 3, blah, 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 S1, S2, S3, blah, blah, blah. So that I do remember. That's very easy for me to remember. It's not telling me. Oh my goodness. Right, I'm going to have to now look at this after the podcast because it's going to drive me nuts. But yeah, there is the album Human Nature is a double album. First half are all like standalone songs, and then the second half is called "All the Works of Nature Which Adorn the Earth." Can't even read it properly. All the works of nature which adorn the world. There we go. I can actually read things which are in front of me, and they're all instrumentals. But I think there are references in there to. I think it's a Pale Blue Dot reference. But the problem is Dream Theater has a song called Pale Blue Dot, I think, and I'm more than sure Avenged Sevenfold have done something related to Pale Blue Dot as well. I'm going to have to go back and look at it now, and I'm going to kick myself if I'm wrong. But I'm now searching on Google. Yes, it is Pale Blue Dot from Dream Theater and Avenged Sevenfold. Ah, it's been too long. It's been too long since I've listened to all this stuff. Yes, it has got Pale Blue Dot in it. There we go. Exists. That's the song. There we go. So yeah, Pale Blue Dot is very quotable in metal music.
There it is. Yeah.
So I think because I heard there must have been like a scientific connection, or maybe because the new album was out, I was like, oh, let's just give them another try. And I really liked the song Noise off that Human Nature album. So again, it was just at the right time. I think also that came out during the pandemic, if I remember rightly. So as you can well imagine, we're all kind of trapped inside our houses and things.
Hmm.
And bands were still releasing music, fortunately. So I guess Noise must have come out before then, because the album was released April 2020. So I don't know when Noise came out. It must have been February. Okay, but I might have heard it during the pandemic, perhaps. I'm not too sure. But it was at the right moment where it grabbed me.
Hmm.
So again, lyrically, for certain songs, depending on your mood or particular even seasons, I find. There's a band in particular that I really like called Catatonia, but they're quite a depressive band, and I often associate them more with autumn going into winter, because when naturally your mood
Hmm.
is, especially in Scotland, when it gets dark a lot, and my mood naturally drops a little bit. As much as I like the cold weather, I don't like the darkness so much. So I really much associate their music and Opeth's music as well with winter. But they've just put out a new album maybe a month or 2 months ago, and I have listened to it. I do like it, but it's like it's the wrong time of year for this. I'm not I'm not prepared for this type of music at this time of year, and I've not had any
Interesting.
major depressive slumps, which have meant that I've gone to it. So yeah, there is definitely a thing with all media in terms of you have to. There's a little bit of serendipity in terms of being in the right place at the right time to discover something or to be ready to consume something.
Hmm.
That's definitely true. Um, so yeah, books I haven't had quite the same things. Again, I'm not when I was a teenager, I was quite an avid reader with the Rebus books, and when I was a younger kid, like Famous Five, and that we were talking about, I used to read every night. Again, I think because I lived in a part of the world where technology wasn't, also at the time period, there wasn't the same technology as there is now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have, a phone beside me when I was going to sleep, so I could watch TV or YouTube on it or whatever. So I had to read books and things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so obviously, then since moving away from home and having more technology and stuff, and having no parents around to tell me that I can't play games until I go to sleep at night, that's kind of changed my habits and things. But I think also, I don't know what your parents were like. Were they a fan of literature and like very much encouraging you to do that, or did you just go about it on your own? Because I found for me, in terms of films and books, even though my parents were very happy that I read, um, they they weren't showing me too much media. And then same with films. There's a lot of maybe classic films they haven't seen. So there's a lot of film media in particular, but also books I've never been exposed to. And again, we talked about this in the last podcast. But I've got that attitude being, well, if a film is really that good, I'll see it eventually at some point in my life. But I'm not stressing
Mm-hmm.
about it because I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Um, but
Right. Yeah, for me, my parents, they were absolutely encouraging of whatever I was interested in, and they had their own interests that they would share to me to one extent or another. A lot of the time, be like, "Hey, listen to this Bob Dylan song," and I'd be like, "Ugh, that guy can't sing." um, I feel like that's one of those things where if you're in the right place, you can really appreciate Bob Dylan, and I was not in that place.
Mhm.
I've been wanting to go and give his music another shot lately, but um, very long period of my life where I was just like, yeah, I don't really need to get into that. But in terms of like direct, like encouragement, or well, they gave me lots of encouragement in terms of like direct sharing of their favorites. That didn't tend to happen too much. But they were very encouraging of me reading, and my whole extended family loved the fact that I was reading, right? So that was all something that they were happy to encourage.
Makes very easy birthday and Christmas presents, right? I was the same.
Yeah,
Always
and
used to get
my
some
mom was a
books.
reader.
Hmm.
Yeah, my mom was a reader, but she didn't really, um, like I said, necessarily like give me all of her favorites or anything like that, right? I was reading what I was interested in,
Right.
which I think they were also happy about, right? Because I was a self motivated reader.
Hmm. Hmm. I guess it depends. Funny, I was just talking about the whole Bob Dylan thing. I've been on a bit of a shine down nostalgia trip over the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Especially when I've been out in the car and stuff, I can put it on. It's just because it's very good for background stuff. 'Cause I know all the songs, so I don't have to very intensively listen. But I was listening to a couple of interviews, and yeah, Brent Smith, the singer, had the same sort of thing where he was as a teenager, he was into thrash and punk and all this sort of thing, and. One day his dad walked into his bedroom and went, I don't understand all this. I don't know why all these singers you're listening to are so angry. I don't know what they're so angry about. But you're clearly passionate about music, and that's great. And he handed him showing the age again, a cassette tape. It was actually
Mm-hmm.
an anthology tape of Otis Redding. And he said, I want you to listen to
Oh,
this.
okay.
It's really good. And Brent just looks at the tape and literally just chucks it in the corner of his room. He's like, I'm not listening to that crap, right? And then, he's tidying up his room a couple of weeks later, and he finds it, and he just says, "Oh, I'll put it on. I'll indulge," and it changed his life. And then from Otis Redding, he went to Ellis Fitzgerald and all of these like classic, blues and jazz singers, and it really influenced him in terms of, even though he's in a rock band, in terms of his singing style and that. So it's funny how it all kind of it all works out in the end. But yeah, I get
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
It's about being able to find that connection, right? And being in the right place for it,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes you're not in the right place for it initially. And you can come back later and then it'll resonate with you in a way that it didn't before.
Right.
And sometimes it's building up the context for yourself. Sometimes it's a matter of just where you are in your life, all that sort of thing, and it just changes your appreciation for things.
Yes. Agreed. Um, the other question I've got, I can't remember if I asked this last time. If not, I'll ask it again. Why 1,000? It's a very, I mean, obviously I know it's a nice round number, but it's a very high number. How on earth did young Rook settle on this as the target that you're gonna? Did you know it was
Well, because
somewhat achievable?
well, so I don't have a great memory of this, but from what I recall, I basically formulated the goal sometime around when I was in third grade, and I was thinking, well, I've read like hundreds of books, right? So I already had a sense. I knew it would be a stretch, right? I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was like, I bet I could get over 1,000 by the time I get to fifth grade. And like I said, I was close. I did it by the end of fifth grade rather than the beginning, but
Still very impressive.
uh, yeah. But I did have a sense that I could do it, which is why, because I was already into the hundreds by the time I thought of the goal, and it was like, well, I think I could get to 1,000 in this time span, and yep, I definitely did.
The only other, maybe I don't get it. Maybe I don't know. If, I assume it's popular. When you were, I guess, kid slash teenager. The only other writer I can think of, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of his name. I'm just going to double check because I don't want to embarrass myself too much. Would it be Louis Satcher? Is that how you pronounce his name?
I am not recalling that name.
The one that I'm most familiar with is the novel that was called Holes, which turned into a film with Sigourney Weaver.
Okay.
And, not Michael Cera, that's wrong. Oh, Shia LaBeouf and what's his name? John Voight. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, I don't know about actors, but I was too old for that, essentially.
Right.
I mean, maybe not too old, but I had already gotten to the point where I was at the point, it was like, well, I'm not going to read that. That's a kid's book, right? Talk about the ironies, right? Me talking earlier about how, like, I'm not going to read adult books, and then coming around to, I'm not going to read that. That's a kid's book. And these days, like, that's something else, right? That's something else that my taste sort of expanded back into when I was living in Japan. I may have talked about this before, where I discovered graded readers, and they had Winnie the Pooh. And I was just so starved for any sort of English at one point when I was living in Japan that I was like, I need something English. And the college bookstore that I was, or not the college that I was studying at had these graded readers. And I was like, oh, Winnie the Pooh. I'll just pick this up. And I flipped through it and I was like, this is actually really well written. And so I sort of got back into kids' books in a way that I wouldn't have thought of when I was, a teenager. But yeah, Holes hit at this point where I was old enough to be not interested in reading it because of that reason, and not yet old enough to be like, well, maybe there's something there. Maybe I would appreciate that, right? So,
I think. I mean,
I've got really into another series that was huge for me was the Redwall series by Brian Jakes. So, that was another major series for me.
I know you can't see. I know you can't see me, but I'm shrugging right now. That means nothing. Redwall. That's.
Yep. It's a whole bunch of books. They've got like animal protagonists, and yeah.
Oh, but that is British. Oops. Okay, that I don't know. Even as a British one. I don't know.
Yep, I actually introduced. So when I was teaching in Japan, some of my students were children of people who, for one reason or another, were living as people who were like native English speakers living in Japan. And they go to the English classes, and everyone else is, learning the most basic English phrases, and I could just have conversations with these kids. So they were not like getting challenged in terms of their English ability in English class. And there was one of those kids who I sort of connected with because he would just have conversations with me all the time, and he would talk about how he's really into reading, and I was like, you might like this series that I grew up with. And so I got him the Redwall series, and he read like 6 or 7 books by the time, uh, he graduated from middle school, and I stopped seeing him. um, but that was fun to sort of revisit that series a little bit later on, because
Um,
it was huge for me when I was growing up.
I'm quickly flicking through while you're talking. I'm going through the Wikipedia page. I'm clicking on the books and looking at the book covers, but just it doesn't ring a bell at all. I don't think I've ever seen these.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that you've never heard of it. It was pretty big in the States. Actually, I remember being kind of surprised that when I went to like look up those books to find for that student of mine in Japan, like they had been issued in like multiple editions and were like referenced as incredibly popular children's works. And I was like, really? Because when I was a kid, I felt like I was the only one who knew about them. But I think, some of that's just there aren't that many kids who like go out and read for pleasure.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, definitely something of my, as I said, younger years before technology kind of took over. We used to do a thing. I don't know how widespread it was, but in the part of Scotland where I grew up, they used to do a thing in the summer holidays where you could go along to your local library and take books out. But you could write, if you wrote like a little review about the book, the library staff would like stamp in if you did X number of books. Maybe it was 6 books during the holidays. Maybe it was one a week. I can't remember exactly how many. You'd get like a little medal and that. So I did that during the summer holidays when I was in primary school. So it's a way to try and encourage kids to read. There used to be a lot of kids at the little ceremony they used to do before they gave like the certificate to you. So yeah, definitely a good way of encouraging kids to read. But now I don't know if
I
that.
would have definitely gone for those medals when I was growing up
I can
if
well
they had
imagine.
them.
I then
They
with
had like summer reading suggestion lists that they would pass out, and they'd be like, "Try to read 3 of these like 20 books," and I'd be like, "I'm gonna read all 20," and they didn't even give me any medals for it. I just read them because I wanted to read as much as possible.
we did something in our secondary school which was I can't remember now maybe it's just called reading challenge or something. I can't remember. Maybe that was the thing in primary school. But the way they did it was there'd be different. You could achieve different levels: bronze, silver, gold, and maybe there's one above it. I can't remember. Most people didn't get above bronze because in order to
Hmm.
get the bronze, you had to read. It wasn't many books, but the thing was they were books that were from the school, and maybe the books weren't the most. I remember reading one, which now I can't remember the name of the book. Maybe it's called. Was it called The Garbage King? Now I'm this is that I pulled that memory from the back of my brain, but it's to do with. I want to say it's Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. Oh, it is. Oh my goodness, where did I pull that from? Yep, that's the cover. Holy
Wow.
moly! Yeah, so it's to do with children living in the streets and things and sifting through the rubbish and that. I can't remember the plot, but that's the general um, premise of it. But I think because we had to read books that the school provided, a lot of people weren't very keen on them. A lot of people didn't get very far. But because I pushed through, and I got
Hmm.
how many, I read through how many other books it was to get the bronze level. I was then able to go to the silver and gold level, and for those, you could read whatever books you wanted, as long as you wrote a review on
Oh,
them
nice.
and the number increased. So I then just went through my book collection at home and I just reread stuff, and I was able to do non-fiction, fiction, whatever I wanted, and I went through it really, really fast. Um, so that
Cool.
it had to get past that hurdle, and then there was gold on the other side where we had to get there first. But yeah, again, we talked about it before. I want to get back into reading, but it's just yeah.
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
oh,
I've talked about it too. Like, I don't read any as much as I used to, right? I talk about all these ways in which I was motivated to be reading all the time, and it's like, yeah, I still like to read, and I'm still always reading something, but it, the younger version of me would be probably be astonished to realize how much I've just sort of let reading go.
hmm. Oh, we talked about it last time. There's just too much media and not enough time. And then once you factor in as well, there are other things to do in your day. You just
It's
can't
true.
do everything. Um,
Hmm.
but it's something I'm looking forward to.
Also, yeah,
Oh,
that's one of the things, right? Like other things in your day, right? You get to this point where you are self-motivated to do things that get you through your life, right? You're self-motivated to go to work.
Hmm.
And it's not like you're forced to go to school, right? Um, you're self-motivated to take care of things. Maybe not every single thing that it's like, oh, like I'm gonna like go home and clean my apartment today, right? Like maybe you don't have that urge, right? But there's certain things where it's like, no, this has to happen. I'm gonna do it.
Right.
And when you're a kid, you don't have to have that self motivation. Your self motivation can be 100%. I'm going to pursue whatever I'm really into,
Hmm.
right? And I feel like I haven't felt that way in a long time, where it's like I wake up in the morning and all I ever want to do is whatever I'm into, right? In this case, it might be reading, but I've gone through periods where even when I was younger, right, and as much as I was into reading, there were periods where I'd be like, no, I just want to watch anime all the time, and that was my obsession. And so, like, I haven't really felt like that in a long time. So interesting to think how that changes.
Hmm. Yeah, so that I was told that lesson quite early on. I remember doing like a work experience placement, and we ended up talking about it. Just a random topic came about video games from the maybe 10 years prior or something like that, and it was that
Hmm.
the guy who I was working with, who was quite a bit older than me, was like not that much older, but still quite a bit older than me. He was like, right, the way the life works is when you're a kid, you have loads of time but no money, and then as an adult, hopefully, you have loads of money but no time. And that they're just that's the constant struggle. You don't have that. You don't have both, and that's the thing
Right.
then, which then really restricts what you can consume in terms of media. And even like I remember as a kid talking about the video games topic, I had loads of video games, but if I think about the cost of all of them, they're all really really dirt cheap because I had no money, so I had to buy I had to save up a lot of my birthday money or whatever from doing jobs or whatever just to get
Hmm.
the new game that come out, or buy lots of little games which were worth like I don't know a couple
Hmm.
of quid each or something. Um,
Oh yeah.
Whereas now I'm just looking and going, well, yeah, money is also a concern, but also I don't have time to play something that requires 50 plus hours to get through the story or whatever. So it's just yeah,
Hmm.
really much it does restrict what you can do, but
Yeah,
that's
it's
okay.
true.
There's time. There should be enough time for everything. And I've got that mentality now. Well, if I don't get round to something, it's fine. I'm not gonna
Hmm.
I'm not gonna stress out. I'm not gonna have FOMO about it. But now
Right.
I want to get back into Nightwish now. Damn it! I'm gonna listen to Nightwish tomorrow. That's the result of this podcast.
All right, changing your life.
Re-listen to some of those Nightwish albums. Um, so yeah. So there we go. And so what we'll do is for this podcast, I'll make sure that I tell you the title and vet it, so you can vet it and you can let me know if you're happy with it, because I don't want to cause any stress in your life. But you see the title, go
Oh,
no.
there was no stress. It was just really funny to me that I made this offhand remark that you then basically let go by, and then I was never even occurred to me that it would be in the title of the episode, and I saw it and I was like, 1,000 books by fifth grade. Like I mentioned that briefly, but I feel like people are going to be disappointed if they click on the episode for that. It's just a passing remark.
Well, there we go. We can call this
um,
one 1,000 books by fifth grade. How's that?
yeah, we've already tricked all those people. They're not going to fall for it again.
Oh, there's like, oh, we've seen this clickbait.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. That was some good follow up.
It was.
So, the other thing that we have done, we have started punting culturally cultural media. I was going to say culturally significant media. That might be a bit of a stretch. But I guess it depends. It depends on what we're talking about. We're passing
Hmm.
across certain things about American culture or British culture and such, and language and things to each other, so we can react to them a little bit. I will leave in the comments. Especially on the YouTube, on Spotify, I'll have to try and work out how I leave a comment, or I might leave it in the Spotify description. The links to some
Hmm.
videos that I have sent Aruk and that Aruk has sent me.
Yep.
Um,
And if you want a taste of this on Scott Sword's private Discord server, well, not private, but Scott Sword's Discord server,
oh yes, of
um,
course. I'll leave a link for that
Would
too.
be another good place to put them. I was actually thinking that we could put the clips up in advance, so the people in your community could go into these episodes already having seen them and having their own reactions, and then getting to know about ours.
Good shout. Good shout. I will do that. I will make a note and do that. Good idea.
So yeah, you too, if you want to get in on the action, can join the Scott Sword community Discord
Links in the
and
description.
get advanced previews of all of these things that we're going to be reacting to.
Absolutely. Do you want to start with the ones that you sent me, that I sent you? How do you want to?
Let's go back and forth, and we can start with, you sent me the videos first, so I guess we can start with my reactions. Would you have a preference for which one I give you my reactions on first?
We could maybe start with the comedy ones.
Okay.
So I sent you the classic comedy sketch Four Candles by the two Ronnies. Is that something
Yes.
you are familiar with?
I had never seen or heard of this before in my life.
Okay. I will be really upfront here. I am not an expert in any stretch of the imagination of the two Ronnies. I'm a bit more
Okay.
familiar with them, especially Ronnie. I'm going to get this right now because I'll look like a book if I get this wrong. Ronnie Barker, the one who is the customer in the sketch, because he did
Okay.
a couple of famous sitcoms on TV2. One of which that I watched a bit of was Open All Hours. Yes, I know it's really old. I've watched reruns of it. Also, it has David Jason in that, who was in Only Fools and Horses. So there's like a double connection there. I know him from that, but he also did other sitcoms. There's one called Porridge, which is set in a prison. So, but in terms of the two Ronnie sketches, I think maybe because the show was never on when I was a kid, or maybe then again, even if it was on as a kid, I might not have found it funny. Because humor again is kind of, as a kid you find very specific things funny, then as an adult you see things in a different way, and you have more knowledge about, in this case it was an English language and like word plays and all this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've gone and watched some of the clips of some of their sketches on YouTube. So that's as far as like goes. I'm not an expert in any stretch of the imagination, but it is still a classic sketch of theirs. So.
Yeah, and I thought it was very clever. My favorite part, in terms of the part that actually made me laugh, was the multiple plays on O's in the middle.
Yeah. I did also wonder how much that would translate because of the pronunciation, but I guess we'll go into that. But yeah.
Yeah. So in case people haven't yet seen the clip for themselves, or just aren't going to and are willing to rely on like terrible summaries,
Yes.
I can give what I would say as a summary. The basic idea is it's this interaction between someone who's come to buy something from a shop and a shopkeeper, and it's a general store because it sort of has to be to make the joke work. And between the way that the customer pronounces the things on the list and the way that he sort of waits for his order to be fulfilled, you get this consistent back and forth sort of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And it gets incredibly aggravating for the shopkeeper.
Right. The way that it's obviously the double meanings of a lot of words, either single letters, which we can talk about for certain things, or words which have very similar pronunciation. But I agree, like, the customer has a very vague way of explaining what he wants, which obviously leads to naturally to a lot of misunderstandings, not even thinking about the wordplay aspect of everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, probably the most illustrative example, just to get listeners on the same page, right? The skit is called Four Candles, and it's spelled as in the number four and then the word candles. But the initial joke, right, the one he walks in on, is the pronunciation four candles is the same for four candles and fork handles.
Yeah.
And this was right out the gate. I was hit with a little bit of an interesting bit of like cultural difference, because when I hear the word fork and then the word handle, I think of, what ends up happening on the show is he puts on the handle to something that in American English I would call a pitchfork.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, you would never think a fork is what you eat with, right? Not a fork
Right.
for the
Like a
for the
garden fork,
garden.
I guess you would call it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I never even thought about that. Yeah, I mean we say a pitchfork, but a fork that you eat with. I mean, it does have a handle, but the handle's not detachable. So why on earth would you buy
Right.
a fork handle that you eat with? It's clearly a fork for the garden.
Right. So it was this extra layer to the joke.
Right.
I was just like, oh, okay. And they probably didn't even intend it. But to me, as an American, I was watching and I was like, oh, okay, I see where this is going to go because this is playing on the accent. Right. He's actually asking for fork handles. But then I was like, but that doesn't make any sense. And then he put a handle for a garden fork on the counter. And I was like, what is this? This isn't a fork handle either.
What's this strange
So I thought it was
implement?
almost like a twist, yeah,
Mm,
built into the skit that it was actually just cultural. So
uh,
that was pretty funny.
the bit that I find particularly hilarious is not just the O's, right? Is it a
Hmm.
hose or pantyhose or whatever, or hoe they use for the garden? But it's once he gives
Hmm.
him the letter O's, and you see him marching back with the box to the back of the
How much
store.
work it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the way that Ronnie Barker as the customer is holding the O's, you're just like, oh my, you know what's gonna happen. And then when he comes back and says, "Do you have any peace?" The way
Yeah.
he's deliberately holding the O's to make it imply even more that it's the O's.
Yep.
But you just know it's not gonna be. That's as the audience, you
Nope.
know what the joke's gonna be. But it's just the acting and like the build up of the anticipation just makes it very funny.
Hmm.
Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, it's
Yeah. That's one thing I appreciated about the skit, right? It's the sort of thing where it's like the audience is sort of in on the joke the whole time,
right.
but it's still funny.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that there's not a huge build up. It's just, I said it's that general rising of aggravation, which
Hmm.
is just great.
Well, the very second one was pretty deceptive, right? There was a pretty big stretch, right? Plugs, uh, going for like so the guy's on his guard, right? So the customer says he wants plugs. The guy's like, all right, what kind of plugs? And he's like, rubber bathroom, which that very obviously leads you in a certain direction, right? It's like, okay, well, you're in on the joke. How are they going to subvert it? Because that seems
Right.
really pointed. And then he's like, no, it's electrical plugs, right?
Yeah. Oh dear.
So it almost becomes like, okay, I'm in on the joke, and therefore, how are they going to subvert the clear expectation here? And they do
Right.
go straight for it. It was pretty good.
Yeah. The fact that I'm sitting here just talking about the skit and I'm laughing so much means just how much I love this skit.
Hmm.
But a nightmare for non like as English as a second language speakers, right? Just
Hmm.
trying to understand the differences between the pronunciations and how easy. I mean, even like the first one, four candles. I mean, you could depending on how you stress it, yeah, you could easily get it round the wrong way. Fun
Hmm.
little tidbit when I can't remember if it was when Ronnie Barker or Ronnie Corbett died, because they're both dead, unfortunately. One of them at their funeral, round the casket, had four candles as a reference to the
Oh, that's
sketch.
funny.
Um, I mean, they could have done it also with the fork handle, but I guess they did. That would have been probably had some strange looks. But yeah,
Yeah.
there's a nice little callback to that. But yeah, I picked the sketch. I mean, the other ones I could have given in terms of famous British comedy, but I thought this one because it would tickle your. It didn't require cultural references. It required more of just like
Hmm.
the language thing. How did you feel about the?
But I will say,
On you go. Yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna
No, no,
say
finish your question because I think it's the same thing.
the final joke. Did that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up too.
Did
It
it?
did not land at all. I had no idea what was going on.
Right, right. I must admit, for quite a while that confused me too a little bit. It's funny when you look at the comments. There are people who are generally confused too. Like, what is that last joke meant to be. As I'm funny with that, I didn't intend it, but the version of the video that I gave actually showed the two Ronnies inside a studio, obviously clearly years later, doing it as a compilation show or something, and they talked about that final joke that they wanted to change it. But yeah, I don't know. Did you research the final joke?
They still didn't give it away. I did a quick search to be like, what the heck is going on here? So, again, for anyone who might not have seen the clip, the shopkeeper just gets completely frustrated when he gets the customer's list and storms off. And his shopkeeper's assistant comes in and he's like, "You deal with this." And the guy doesn't say anything. He just goes over to this box and he clears away a thing that's been blocking the label for the box from view, and it has the words Bill Hooks written on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the skit. That's the final joke. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well,
what's going on here?
The second, like, the shop assistant does ask, how many do you want? One or two. So he's referring that clearly this is the thing that the customer has asked for, apparently.
Yeah, well, he has the list.
Right,
yeah, he has the list.
Right. But the customer doesn't give any additional information. He doesn't pronounce the word in any way.
Right. And that's what I found when I looked it up, was that the pronunciation, which in the accent would be something like Bill-Hooks, sounds like a less appropriate word.
Right. I mean, there are probably two. Maybe this is just me, the way that I would pronounce it. I feel like if we're going to swear on here, I mean, not this first one I'm going to say is a swear in any way. I feel that Billock, or Bill Hook, could sound a little bit more like Pillock, with a P instead, and a pillock is like an idiot, at least in English, in British English. But then that wouldn't work with the joke, because a pillock is a person, so that wouldn't work for an object. But yeah, I guess the idea is it sounds like bollock, which again, yeah, it's kind of a funny one to end on. I guess I find it also kind of funny too that it's the thing that pisses off the shop assistant is seeing the word and him imagining the pronunciation, because if you just see it written, it looks completely innocent.
Right.
Unless maybe the writing is also terrible. That could also maybe made him confused. But there's no way you mix up Billock and Bollock, I don't think, in terms of writing. Or maybe you do,
right.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's just kind of interesting when you hear them talk about it, that Ronnie Barker wasn't happy with that final joke. I guess the rest of the sketch is just so strong that you maybe don't worry about it so much.
Yeah, it definitely, like, the unfortunate thing was it left me scratching my head, but then, like I said, the central portion of the skit was really funny, so I did appreciate that.
Were there any other vocabulary differences that cause a slight barrier to understanding, apart from the fork or the pitchfork?
Foot pumps was understandable to me, but it felt like a little bit of a stretch for an American English speaker, because we do have the idea of pumps as shoes, but I mean, maybe it's a dated thing. I don't think anyone would call shoes pumps these days.
Right. Yeah, maybe not either for us so much. I'd have to go into a British shoe shop and look at some pumps and see if they actually would have that name, or maybe they would call them more like loafer. I don't know. Don't know. I'll have to look into that actually. But again, I can't remember when that sketch was written, but I think it must be maybe the 80s, I want to say. So again, language just naturally just shifts over time.
Right.
76. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, I mean the language also fashion just naturally shifts. So yeah, it would be slightly dated in that sense, but no cultural references. So yeah, it holds up over time, which is good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess that covers the first comedy skit from you. So do you want to talk about my comedy skit that I sent you?
Yeah, so you sent me one that was even older, from the 40s, I think. Oh, I guess this sketch must have had multiple iterations. This one was from a film.
Yeah. Yes, the one I sent you is from a film, but it's actually just a comedy act that they worked into that particular movie.
I see.
And yeah, so they the comedy duo that performs this, Abbott and Costello, sort of similar to you, not like well versed in the history of Abbott and Costello. We're talking about, for anyone who's listening, the classic sketch, "Who's on First?" And
Yes.
uh, I sent you the clip from the movie because it's the most extended and I think like funniest take that they have recorded. But there are recordings. They performed this routine like hundreds of times,
Mm,
and maybe not hundreds, but over and over and over again over the
sure.
years, and it became sort of their signature bit. Everyone else calls it "Who's on First." They seem to commonly refer to it as baseball, and yeah, and it's an absolute classic of theirs. Like I said, you were saying, it goes back to, I think, that's what I was looking up. Late 1930s, 1938, on a radio program. Looks like was the first performance.
Right. Whereas the film would have
So
been a little bit more recent, but
yeah, and the
still, I
film
mean,
was later.
I'm looking on their Wikipedia. They're saying they're active between mid 30s to mid 50s. So it's. I mean, I already could tell by looking at it. It was like, all right, black and white. We were talking about that earlier. It
Yep.
immediately dates it within a particular period of time. So I already knew without even
Hmm.
looking. Right, this is pre 60s. This is the you know.
Yep.
Again, I mean,
Yeah, the film's 1945.
there you go. There you go. I mean, yeah. These are two. Like, if you just said the name Abbott and Costello, then I would know the genre that they're in. But again, it's not. This is the first time that I have seen a skit of theirs. I've actually. There's a callback to something. I'll hopefully remember and get round to that. But yeah, basically, the skit is. They're basically describing the St. Louis baseball team. I can't remember. Who is. Abbott is the one
The
with the top hat.
Fielders.
Yeah, the fielders of the baseball team, and they're describing who's on first base and second base and so on. But the names of
Hmm.
the players are such that they have double meanings. So it's kind of funny how we both pick. I know a lot of comedy is wordplay, but it's kind of interesting how we picked very sort of similar skits in the sense of double
Yeah, I thought that
meanings.
was funny too. There's actually a huge overlap in the nature of the humor behind the skits that we sent each other.
I see. Assuming you,
Because
assuming you sent yours to mine before you'd watched the one I'd sent to you.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't watch yours. It was just you were like, we're going to talk about like language and culture differences, so I have a funny clip to send you, right? You said you were going to send me a classic comedy skit, and then you also said you were going to send me
Like
I forget what
Slack.
you called the other one. Yeah, but it was something something that gave me the idea that it was all about like accents. And so I was like, okay, so I need to think of like comedy skits that involve wordplay.
Right.
And the first thing that came to mind was Who's on First.
Right.
So it's not 100% coincidence that this is what happened, but there is a very strong overlap there.
So I mean, without giving away too much of it, I mean, as you said, the name of the skit, at least on the video, is who's on first. So as a question, which player is on first base? But the surname of the player is who. So
Right.
and then there is also the similarity that the one who's asking for information about the baseball team gets increasingly irate at
Mm-hmm.
the seemingly sort of ambiguity and the lack of cooperation from the one who is explaining the baseball team. Because he's also saying, who's on first? And he's like, naturally. And all
Right.
these are like, what?
So I threw the ball to naturally.
No!
No, you threw
You
the
threw
ball
the
to who? That's what I'm trying to find out.
So, again, I mean, you could tell very, very quickly where the skit was going.
Yeah.
The thing I would say from it was, like, it's a very impressive skit from the perspective of they got it bang on. It's
Yeah.
so easy to get something mixed up in there, and I'm sure. I mean, I was reading the comments. There are people who had taken the time to go through it all properly, see, oh, they must have made a mistake in there somewhere. No, there's no mistake. They did that very well, and obviously then this was in a film, so they could do multiple takes. But if they did it in terms of in front of live audiences and that, they'd have to do very well to know that skit off by heart, and they wouldn't mix it up.
Well, see, the cool thing I think is they didn't actually like memorize it. because you can go through all the different performances that they've got, and you've got more than just this clip on YouTube. They've got all, you can find a variety of different clips of them doing it, and they're all different. No skit is exactly the same.
So there was an
So
improvisation nature to it, but they still got
yeah,
it
there's an
right.
element of improvisation every time they perform the skit. And so they've got like certain like standards, like certain go-tos that they know that they can do,
Mm,
but they sort of mix up the delivery every time. And it, as far as I know, like they never get to the point where they mess it up. And the one person, like the joke always comes through, and if you parse the language, it's like, oh, I see what's happening here and where the miscommunication is coming in. And they right, which is impressive to me that they would like have it in their heads enough that they could not make those mistakes, but at the same time not just be doing it rote.
right, right. And going through the motions of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, it was very impressive. I was like, oh my! And then because especially as the skit goes on and it becomes even faster paced, and there's more emotion coming into because the irate nature of one of them, and the other one's telling them to calm down all the time and all this sort of thing. Um,
Yep.
I mean, again, different era, different comedy. I'm not putting it down to the fact that it's American comedy or anything. It's just I mean, obviously it's a bit biased, right? Because I'm a huge fan of the Four Candles sketch, but I think because a lot of it is repetitive between it's the same thing with the who and the what and things. So there's a lot of repetitive nature of the same misunderstanding. Whereas with Four
Yeah.
Candles, it's a different misunderstanding every time. Um,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, if I liked it from a, as I said, it's impressive that they could do it like that
Mm-hmm.
and not make the mistake, but I didn't find it as funny. But again, that's maybe just me and my particular style of humor that I like, perhaps. It was not quite. I mean, it was very enjoyable, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I wasn't in
Yeah.
stitches watching it. But maybe it might
I
be
could
more.
die laughing every time I watch this skit. Like, not necessarily this given performance that I watch every time, but every now and then, I'll just go look it up when I want to laugh.
I
It's so funny to me.
It feels like you got the same connection to it as I do with Four Candles. I would probably say though, if I was to see this, um, maybe live in a theater, especially if I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what was coming per se, I would probably find it very funny because a lot of these, I mean, it's a type of sketch which could easily be spun off in different, there'd be easy ways of repeating it with other, contexts and things, with different
Yeah.
words. I would,
Yeah.
if I was watching
And
it
you
in a
talk about
live
how
setting,
repetitive it is. Like, for me, part of that is what makes it so funny. Because you get to the point where the guy knows what the other guy's going to say, and he
yeah,
says it with him. It's
yes,
like, I don't know, third base.
yeah,
How did
exactly,
we get to third base? I don't know.
yeah,
It's like they've gone through the routine enough that the repetition actually becomes funny, at least for me.
right. And then the guy with the top hat just sighs because he just knows what the answer's going to be. Oh, okay, it's
Yep.
that. Um, so yeah, it was neat, and it was nice to see something of the guy again. I'm not familiar with them. The thing I found very interesting though when I was watching it, because I got like this callback, was I will send this to you afterwards. Not that we have to talk about this on the podcast, but I watched a few years ago an interview with Miles Kennedy and Mark Tronic from Alter Bridge, where they did like a really funny
Hmm.
interview, nothing to do with music. It was all like off the cuff stuff. What Looney Tunes characters your favorite? Talk about Looney Tunes. Who's your favorite Looney Tunes character? Have you ever been arrested? All this sort of stuff. And they did one
Hmm.
question, which was, if you could be a Sesame Street character, which Sesame Street character would you be? And they started talking about Bert and Ernie. And
Hmm.
Mark is having to explain to Miles who Bert and Ernie are because Miles can't remember who Bert and Ernie are. And the way they've
Oh, wow.
edited it is they've interjected tiny like segments from this skit, who's on first, into the interview. So I heard them say, "Who's
Oh,
on
okay.
first?" Naturally, and I remember watching that interview years ago, going, why are they interjected with this random skit? This has nothing to do with Sesame Street. What's all this about? And it was only then when I was watching this skit going, oh, I recognise these two from that interview. Oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
So then that was that funny callback. Okay, like, that's what that was. So yeah, there's that. That had a similar sort of call back sort of response, like, wait, which one's Ernie? Oh, that one's Ernie. Yeah, it's good. So yeah, thank you for clearing that up. I know that wasn't the intention of you sending me the skit, but that cleared up a question mark in my brain about who those two men were, and it ended up being Abbott and
Yeah, well, it's one of
Costello.
the that's one of the cool things about going back to media or discovering for the first time media that other people have known about and that's really famous. And all of a sudden, you get all these references. You were talking about that, like you finally watch the Star Wars films. It's like, oh, and all these pop culture references.
Right, I can now I understand what it means by I have the high ground and all this and hello there and all this sort of thing. Yeah, because I know the source of it now. So it was good to see. I'll have to. I've seen there's
Yeah,
a huge list of skits. I'll be
and
tempted
it's
to go
got
through.
it's got yeah. I like I said, I haven't watched a lot of other Abbott and Costello skits. This is like the one that I know, but it's very famous in at least American culture. Um, it's they've got it playing on a loop in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Uh, it looks like I'm on the Wikipedia article here, so I'm just reading off some of this stuff. 1999, Time magazine named it the best comedy sketch of the 20th century.
Oh wow.
Um, clearly, because they were looking back on the like millennium,
Hmm.
uh, and they've got all sorts of other like fun like references and tie-ins and accolades and things that it's just been like constantly referenced. And there are occasional like real life parallels which are kind of fun. Probably the most impactful to me was, and I didn't experience this, but the fact that it happened in my lifetime sort of makes me connect with it a little bit better. In September of 2007, um, the Los Angeles Dodgers shortstop Chin Moon Hu, a late season call up from Las Vegas, got his
Hmm.
first major league hit against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Uh, the Dodgers announcer Vin Scully said, Shades of Abbott and Costello. I can finally say who is on first."
Yeah, I saw that there are multiple players who have had shared the names of the ones that I mean, the ones which are slightly more extreme, like I don't know and Tamara maybe
Oh
or
yeah,
today and stuff. But there were multiple which have done it, and yeah, obviously that's just asking for I mean, depending on what era they're playing in, either to be memed or to have newspaper articles and stuff with their with referencing to the sketch and things. So I mean that's really good that it's still enduring in that sense, and it you know it has the impact in that that sport. It's kind of interesting because you did apologize to me when you said it to me. Sorry about all the baseball
yeah.
terminology. Fortunately, I know the basic baseball terms, so I still understood first base, pitch, and all this sort of stuff. If it went more
Hmm.
complex into actual tactics and strategy, I wouldn't have a clue. But I was listening to it. I didn't have a problem in terms of the language, fortunately. So
That's good.
there was no hurdle
Yeah,
there for me.
I was re-listening to it. I was like, this is really funny, but if you don't know anything about baseball, it's not going to be as funny.
Mm.
And I wasn't sure how high your like base level familiarity was. So that's good to know.
Fortunately, we play rounders at school in the UK, so I think some of the
Okay.
terminology is a little bit similar. So that was fine. I
Hmm.
was covered for that.
Good.
So yeah, thanks for sending that. It was a good watch. I like the speculation in the comments too about because at the beginning of the sketch he breaks one of the lamps on the theater
Hmm.
stage, and the people speculating was that deliberate or not, and also then he almost forgot the name of the other character. Well, because I think maybe
Yes. Yeah, that was funny.
they were so hung up on the who's and the whats and whatever, he must have just slipped the name of his counterpart character got
Yeah.
slipped. But that's
My
fine.
favorite thing My favorite thing from the comments is, and this is true if you're watching this specific video, because it's for a movie, they were doing multiple takes, and they could not get a take in which someone on the set wasn't laughing.
I heard there was laughter in the background. I could hear that. That was definitely audible. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the director was finally like, this is the one we're going to go with, because they kept trying to get a take where someone wasn't laughing. And it was like, no, we're just going to go with this one because we think it's the best take.
Just those little laughters were just sneaking in. I love that.
Hmm.
Like I couldn't work out at first because obviously it had like the Universal like logo and stuff. I was like, well, this is from a film, but it looks like there's a live audience there. But there's nobody laughing, but then occasionally I'd hear a laughter. So have they suppressed the laughter? What's going on here? So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and every now and then, like one of the characters will be like, "Ladies and gentlemen," right? So it sounds like there's an audience.
Right.
So it's confusing. I almost sent you another one where it's actually them performing it like live in front of an audience, but ultimately I was like the standard version of the skit to me is the one from that movie, so I went with it.
It's a real act of either theatre comedians, if it's like stand up or like a sketch like this, or if you are like a sitcom on TV where you actually have a live studio audience there. It's a real skill for them to be able to do all their lines and things, but not be influenced by the audience laughter. Because I'm terrible. I laugh when I'm telling my own
Oh yeah.
jokes, let alone I have like no poker face at all. I would never be able to be a good comedic actor in the sense of holding it in if you're about to say a really funny line. Um,
Yeah.
so
Oh, I'm completely the same. I'll start laughing before I say something that I think is funny.
um, especially if it's something that you got planned, right? You know, oh, this is good. This
Yeah.
is gonna be a good one. This is gonna land pretty well. But yeah. I had to do a thing recently actually where spoilers for YouTube, but I've done a wingspan quiz.
Ooh.
And I introduced the people who were participating, and I made it a little bit comedic, and I hyped them up. There was some jokes in there, and I had to concentrate so much not to laugh when I
Mm-hmm.
was introducing them, because otherwise I could have done like 10 takes. It would have been awful. So
Mm-hmm.
laughter is very much contagious with me. If someone's laughing, the thing I laugh at, it's such a stupid thing to laugh at, but when something really basic, I've watched some video. I'll send them to you. The Alter Bridge band trying to introduce themselves for like a promotional clip, and they just cannot even say their names correctly without smiling or laughing, and they're doing it like 50. I just laugh at that. I just think that's funny. Just people who cannot
That's funny.
control their own laughter is very funny to me.
Yep.
So yeah, good skit, good skit. So yeah, so those were the two comedies. Well, I mean, I guess the other thing I did send you was comedy too, but the intention was different. It was not.
Yes.
It's a sketch, but the sketch was not to showcase British comedy. It was to showcase British language slang. So,
Right.
um, did
Yeah,
you?
and this is a YouTube short, and it's just sort of a rapid fire, right? It's the perspective of, it's right in the title, a Brit and a German on holiday. And the basis of the humor is the British guy is just throwing all of this British slang at the German woman who he's on holiday with. And the woman, they did some like, I couldn't, this was the part that I found the hardest to follow was when they apparently just did literal translations of German phrases. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah,
Uh, that was the part that I found hardest to follow. Most of the British slang I was actually okay with. I actually think I didn't find this one like super hilarious or anything, but I this is sort of like you were saying about the Abbott and Costello one. I found it impressive. What I found impressive about this one wasn't necessarily the delivery, although I'm sure it must have been hard to pull off because both of the people who are in the skit, if that's the right word, are very good at like keeping a straight face. But the thing that really impressed me was how well they were able to establish context for basically every term. Not like 100%,
hmm
but even the ones that if you had given to me like in a quiz, I might have messed up, right? I was able to follow along with when I was watching this short because just as an example, I've heard of this thing called Cockney rhyming slang,
yeah,
and I listened to a podcast that was like going over like the logic and how it works and what some of the examples are, and I was having a hard time following along with what the examples were because like I get that you say two things and they rhyme with this other thing that you don't say and they substitute for the thing that you haven't said, but I had a hard time following it. When the guy in this skit throws in a little bit of the rhyming slang, right? He uses it as part of a phrase. It's like, "Can you Adam and Eve it?"
hmm
And it's really, really easy for me to hear that and just say, "Can you believe it?" Right? I can
right,
I can hear it.
yeah,
And that's not something that I can always hear when I get examples of Cockney rhyming slang. And so
Yes.
I was impressed with their ability to couch all of these specific terms and pieces of slang in a way that makes it understandable to someone who's just like scrolling through on YouTube.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of yeah. Again, obviously, as a Brit, I didn't need that context. So it's interesting hearing it from your perspective as a native English speaker, but not familiar so much with British slang. That the context was very well set. Because I wouldn't view the skit with that. I would view it as being, oh,
Right.
this is really funny. The German doesn't understand the English slang that's been thrown out at her. And she just gets
Mm-hmm.
again. There seems to be a bit of a theme developing here that she gets very frustrated and leaves, and
Mm-hmm.
calls him an effing idiot on the way out as well. Um, so yeah, the jokes too in the comments, because again, there's a little bit of like context here, but most of the guy's skits are about uh, most of his skits involve his British persona, and his German
Mm-hmm.
persona, and they are two different characters, and they visually look different. And they have different personalities, but they interact with each other, and the camera cuts back and forth between them. And the joke in quite a lot of the things is that his British persona becomes a little bit more German the more and more he gets exposed to German culture and stuff. But then the joke is here a little bit.
Ah,
He goes on holiday to Ibiza or wherever it is they're meant to be, and then he just ends up reverting back to his pure Britishness because he's a Brit on
totally
holiday in the
reverts.
sun.
I see.
So it's like an extra layer there, but just even alone, like the whole idea that his wife doesn't understand. So then she ends up reverting to then saying German phrases, which make no sense to a British speaker. I think is also that extra. Like, I'm the same. I don't. Even though I've learned a little bit of German.
Well, they translated it.
Yeah.
I don't think she says it in German. What she says is, "I only know the train station."
Oh no that one
That
she
doesn't make any
no that
sense.
one she did actually say in German. Ich verstehe no
Okay,
Bahnhof.
well,
But they
I
put the English translation
okay,
underneath. To be fair, they put the English translation underneath.
yeah.
But
They
then
put the translation and they put the literal translation, and then "going me on the cookie,"
yeah,
right?
that makes no
I'm pretty
sense.
sure was English.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That one was said in English. I didn't know the expression either. I've only learnt it thereafter. I've asked, since watching these skits, I've asked German people who I know, is this an expression, you're going me on the cookie? And they were like, yeah, it just means you're pissing me off. And then
right.
I only understand
Hmm.
train station means I understand nothing. Like, it's all Greek to me,
Right.
kind of vibe.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I didn't know them either.
Those are the explanations that I found on the internet. Yeah.
But, but again, you can kind of understand from context, even if you don't understand the expression, you can
Yes.
tell, okay, she's a bit pissed off here. She doesn't understand anything with
Yeah.
this. Yeah, you can kind of understand what's going on. So
Right.
I just like, yeah, the
I
Adam.
did take down.
Oh, on you go. Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say
I was gonna say
I was
traffic stop.
I was
It's a
right.
Mexican standoff.
Exactly.
Go for it.
I was just say I was very impressed with the Cockney rhyming slang. Because out of all the things, I thought, I wonder if the Adam and Eve thing will hit with you, and it did. So that's good. I'm glad that was the case.
Yeah. So I did go through and I listed out like a number of these things, right? Um, the opening thing is I'm going to go grab some bevs or something like that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't need any help understanding bevs. That just seems like a very natural shortening of beverage to me. And that one I would have gotten. The funny thing is, the first term he uses to explain what that means is tinnies. And that one I would never get
Yeah.
if it weren't for the surrounding context that was already there, right? If he'd opened with tinnies instead of bevs, I would have been like, what?
Right. I'm the same. I would say the same. For me, Bevs is clearer than Tinnies. But
Hmm.
maybe that was intentional. Maybe he
Yeah,
deliberately
maybe
then did
that was
something.
intentional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. But maybe people could comment and say no. Tinnies is maybe it's a regional thing too. Yeah, Bevs would
Maybe.
be definitely the one that I would reach for first rather than Tinnies.
Hmm. Yeah, skint, I don't know if I would have gotten like presented neutral, but I definitely got it when he's like, he pulls out his wallet and is like, I'm totally skint,
Right.
right? It's very clear from the sketch what he's actually saying. And then all the different terms for drunk, right? Smashed, hammered, battered, whatever. Those are all super easy. Um, I mentioned that I had no idea what the German was. I had to look those up. On the lash, I didn't know. Even in the skit, I
Hmm.
got a little bit of the context there. So, and just the general talk of drinking, I was able to sort of guess, but I wasn't sure. I had to look that one up.
So it's interesting. Before the podcast, I did actually look up that because I was like, why is it on the lash? Where does that come from? Because lash can mean other things, but there is an expression called lash back apparently, which means to drink alcohol rapidly. Not that I've ever heard that,
Hmm,
but maybe that is then the origin of on the lash. You're
maybe.
off on the binge. Um, but yeah, that's quite common on the lash. Um,
Yeah. And then effing and blinding, I think you may have put that on the quiz, but I didn't need to know what it meant.
right.
So I didn't know what it meant. And then he used it in the skit, and the context made it very clear because he said it after someone swore at him. And it was like, oh, okay. Now I know what that means.
He also does something else. Um, he's before he says, "Oh yeah, there's no need to be effing and blinding." Before that, he says the word core.
Oh, yeah.
That's also quite a Cockney thing. And core is like this word to indicate like surprise. We often say, "Oh, core, blimey." It's like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god," kind of that's phrase, right? It's indicating surprise at something.
Right. I didn't pick up on that in the skit, but I've heard that sort of thing is like there are certain phrases as an American English speaker that I've just heard that are like quintessentially British English phrases,
Mm.
and core blimey is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
It's up there with what are some of the other ones? What's all this then?
What's all
Uh,
this then? Yeah,
yep. You what, mate?
bruv. You want bruv?
uh, yeah.
Um,
These are various aspects of British culture that have just permeated. I think sort of like truck and lorry, right? There are certain go-to examples
right.
that I think of as an American, where it's like, oh, this is how they do things in Britain.
Hmm. And then maybe
It's
the
funny. I actually go ahead.
let me say maybe then the joke is when you do come to the UK, maybe a lot of people don't say that phrase. That phrase that you think, oh, it's really famous. That's quintessentially British. Maybe a lot of people don't actually say it in the end.
Nobody says it anymore. Yeah,
Yeah.
or ever, right? Maybe
Yeah.
it's been like overinflated. I when I went to live in Japan, I was really surprised how many Japanese people really wanted me to say "Oh my God." And anytime I said it, they would just burst out laughing. And I was like, what's so funny about the phrase "Oh my God"? I don't understand. Is it just like the level of animation with which I say it? Because I'd play it up if they wanted me to say it. I'd be like, no, 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 I'm not gonna say it, no, and then I'd be like, oh my god, right? Like to like really play it up and make it funny. But they didn't care necessarily about that. I just needed to say the phrase, and I realized, oh, this is one of these things. Like it's a stereotypical American phrase, right? They're looking for me to say the thing. And when I go over there and when I say the thing, they get a certain level of satisfaction from me saying it as an American. And like my impression is that Americans actually don't say that super often, right? It's not like we don't say it. You watch American movies, you'll hear it, right? It's not an uncommon phrase, but it's not as common as the Japanese people. Like I couldn't explain why all these people wanted to hear this specific phrase. Um, and so then, right, like later on, I was thinking about, I think it was probably some point after I started talking to you and Roscoe, because this is the only reason it would have been on my mind. I started thinking, well, what about those like British phrases, like that I associate, true or not, they might be false, that I associate with like British people saying their British expressions, right?
Mm.
Um, and I was thinking, oh, actually, now I get it. Now I understand why those Japanese people wanted me to say that. Because if I was talking to a British person and they used one of those phrases, I'd be like, "You did it! You said the thing!"
Yeah. You said the thing that I've always learned that you say. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, we probably talked about it before, but the classic one is, "Oh, raining cats and dogs." Nobody
Mm-hmm.
sass that. Nobody says that
Mm-hmm.
at least anymore. Anyway, that's very old out of
Right.
fashion.
Yeah, it's totally outdated. Yeah.
Right. So I've talked about before how because I've got English parents and the language, especially my mum would use growing up in London. I mean, I have a certain extent of vocabulary, which maybe my Scottish friends wouldn't have. But then conversely, they know Scottish vocabulary that I don't know. So it's interesting. So yeah, then the other one was he talks about back in a jiffy.
Oh yeah, but that is so completely understandable to me that it like I am surprised that's considered British.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh.
because I would just use that phrase.
Oh, that's
There's a
interesting.
there's a chain there's a chain of actually I don't know if they're around anymore because I haven't seen them in some time. But when I was growing up, there was an oil change like group that their whole thing was they'd work on your car and change your oil super fast. And in order to emphasize that, they called themselves Jiffy Lube because you'd be in and out in a jiffy.
Oh, that's what that is. I just did a search for Jiffy and that came up, and I was like, wait, what?
Yep.
Ah, I see. Interesting. Well, in the UK, we have a thing called a Jiffy bag, which I've now
Ah.
discovered is actually because of the name of the company. But a Jiffy bag is like the mail envelope, but it's padded. So if you don't have a letter, if you have maybe some documents which need to be a little bit better protected, they got like a little bit of the bubble wrap on the inside,
Okay.
but not big enough so it's a box or a parcel. But it's a Jiffy bag. So if you're sending something that's a little bit more delicate, but not enough
Mm-hmm.
to warrant sending a box or something with loads of bubble wrap, that's a Jiffy bag. It's named after the company, not actually the fact it's about quick. But Jiffy on its own means that something's very quick. But that's it. That's kind of interesting, actually. That's not. But is the expression "back in a jiffy"? Maybe more.
No, see, I'd never heard of a jiffy bag before, but if you said back in a jiffy to me, I would be like, okay.
Ah,
Like that wouldn't set off my British English alarms at all.
well, that's very interesting.
I think there was another one. It sort of sounded from his delivery like he expected hunky dory to be a surprise, and that was not a surprise to me at all either.
Hmm. Maybe it's just also the fact that for the European audience, they'd find it very confusing with the word jiffy. Um,
Yeah, maybe.
but yeah, that's interesting that
Yeah, maybe that's something
it's
that,
British,
yeah, like it might translate across the Atlantic, but not necessarily over to Germany, right?
right? Because it's so slang.
Or other
You
European
never learn
countries.
that.
Yeah.
You never learn that in. I mean, maybe in C2 class you would learn it, but yeah, you might not ever learn that.
Hmm.
And yeah, I love the expression "put a spanner in the works."
Yes. That's another one of the classic Britishisms that we learn here.
Mm.
Is that one actually used?
I would say so. I don't remember the last time maybe the one I would use. Maybe it's not quite the same meaning, but I would often say "oh, cat amongst the pigeons."
Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard you say that. That's the one we don't have, and I've not heard before. We don't really say spanner in the works here, but I associate that as being a British phrase.
But it's maybe a little bit different. That's just more that something disrupts a group, where span in the works is more a case of a problem or complication. So
Right.
it's not quite the same, but it definitely didn't feel a dated expression when he said it. It definitely felt
Hmm.
a very natural phrase to say there. Um, so yeah, it didn't feel like, oh, is that his grandmother talking or something? No, it definitely felt like something
Right.
that flowed very naturally in that skit. Um,
Good to know.
so yeah. Oh well, it didn't cause the cultural complication that I thought it might. But there you go.
No.
But the skits are very funny. They're very, very, very good. I could binge a lot of those skits. Not that I'm a big fan of YouTube Shorts, but I could easily watch a lot of those YouTube Shorts. And then the ones we have
Nice.
the German counterpart as well. Is very good. So the one you sent me was not a skit. It was
Hmm.
more
Nope.
an educational
Nothing
video.
comedic at all. Yeah, it was more educational. Yep.
Definitely educational. I've already subscribed to the channel. I'll listen to more of it. It's actually a British guy.
Yeah, I may end up subscribing to this channel as well. This is Ollie Richards, for people who don't know, because I was doing a search. So you said you were sending me something to do with I in my memory, I don't know what you actually said, but in my mind, you said you were sending me a comedy skit and something to do with I guess you would say slang, but in my mind, I heard accents for some reason, and so I thought,
I wrote slang.
okay,
I'm looking at
there
the
you go.
chat.
See, you've got Discord right in front of you. But somehow in my mind, slang turned into accents, and I was like, now how could I like how could I like go and find videos on American accents, and I did a quick search for things, and this is maybe like my key takeaway of this whole video that I'm about to summarize here, but I don't mind giving it like right at the start, which is I found all these videos where people were talking with various levels of expertise about American accents, and almost all of them, either the person was just describing the accent without anyone performing it, or it was like a professional voice who, and I have to admire the time, effort, and skill that it takes to master an accent that's different from your native one.
Hmm.
But they put in that work, and then it just be them. And to me, like that's impressive, and I'm glad you can do that. And I can understand, like if you're making a YouTube video, it's going to make for an impressive presentation, and it's going to be easier than getting a lot of people involved in getting the like all these different accents together for people to hear as a reference. But at the same time, I feel like there's no substitute for actually hearing people who speak natively in that
In the
accent.
wild.
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's this YouTube channel was the first one I found who the person actually did it. They actually went to the effort of finding clips of people speaking in the appropriate accents. And I was like, this person is on my wavelength. And so that's why I ended up sending along this video.
And some of the clips that they'd put into the video were from other YouTube channels that had only a handful of subscribers. So they really had to go searching to try and find these. But I did appreciate having seeing somebody, on the ground, so to speak, doing the accent rather than Ollie just sitting there doing the accent. And there was a little bit of theoretical stuff about like the intrusive R
Right.
and all this sort of thing, but it wasn't a really deep dive analytical video, which I thought was I definitely
Right.
appreciated. I didn't feel like I had to sink. I didn't have to sit with extreme concentration trying to get some. I watched it twice. It's about 15 minutes more or less. Once you take out like some of the promotional stuff, it's a little bit shorter. But I watched it twice and I felt like I got a sense. I wouldn't be able to, with expertise, repeat back a lot of the information, but I was able to watch it and go, okay, this is very digestible. It wasn't over the top in terms of the analysis, and it had a nice sort of. It wasn't too long on each accent, and you can get a bit of a flavour of what it was.
Right.
So
I will say my one criticism of the video was because this is new to me, right? This isn't like me presenting something that I'm super familiar with to you. This was also a discovery for me. The one thing that I thought was a little bit weird was he presents it almost as this quiz, like, can you guess what region this accent is from? And I was like, I don't care about that part of your video at all.
So you're just skipping those 5 seconds forward or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I find it really interesting that I was expecting an American. I didn't know who this Ollie Richards was, and I was expecting an American. As soon as he started speaking, I was like, "Oh, you're not American, okay?" But clearly, he must have an interest in accents and stuff. So he clearly does his research. But it must be really hard as somebody who's not in the country having to do research on it. But it seems like seems like they put the work in. I found it fascinating in terms of these very sort of pockets of different accents. I mean, the Southern accent, obviously, that's one I often tell my students that the big exception is the South. But I didn't realize these very, very specific accents, like the New Orleans accent, the Yat accent, as it was. I've got notes in front of me. I don't do this from memory. And the Yupa accent from Michigan and things. The one in particular, as I was watching it the very first time, was the one from Miami.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I watched the video, I must have been a tiny bit distracted. I must be doing other stuff or whatever, and I heard in particular it was the clip of the woman from the dating video or whatever that was, and the way she was speaking, I was suddenly like, wait, is that a Spanish speaker? What's going on? And I realized no, it's not. It was a native of Miami, and it was the point he made in the video, right? The rhythm of the way that she was speaking was like, yeah, that totally sounds like a Spanish person who's learned English as a second language, but it's not. But that's what it sounds like to me. It has that, and it was really good at the analysis. Obviously, as somebody who is used to hearing Spanish people who are learning English, that rhythm just naturally then sits in, They have that same
Yeah.
groove and rhythm of when they try to speak. Same thing when I try to speak
Yeah.
Spanish. I'll speak Spanish almost like a British person with very British-esque sort of timings and stresses and things. Because it's not completely
Mm-hmm.
native to me. So it's really cool to hear English, but from a native English speaker, but with that sort of Spanish, almost, yeah, it's a Latin flavor. I thought it was really neat.
Yeah, that was very cool. That was a fun coincidence because I got to that accent and I was like, "Ooh, I bet Scout Sword's gonna appreciate this one."
I did, very much
Yeah,
so.
that's cool.
Um, I think that the main issue
Yeah.
with me from like when I'm watching the video, I mean, obviously the New Orleans one, I'm like, okay, it's a city, but a lot of the other
Mm-hmm.
ones, like the main, even though they're calling it the main accent, it was going,
Right, the Mainer. But yeah.
yeah, the main accent was going along. It wasn't just Maine. It was a lot of that sort of New England,
Right.
sort of along the coast, and then there was the other one that was along the whole Atlantic seaboard of Carolina and Georgia. Because I don't have a sense,
Mm-hmm.
even I don't have a sense of scale of the American
Mm-hmm.
continent. I know it's very big, but it's still when they say, "Oh, the accent is visible in this area," I'm like, okay. For me, that feels like a very
Mm-hmm.
large area for one accent still, because I'm so used to being from a country
Well, it is.
that has so many accents
That's
in a very small area.
so there's two things that I would emphasize. The first of which is one of the other criticisms I have of this video is the specific nuances of each of these accents goes deeper sometimes than he shows. There is more to the Southern accent than the Southern drawl,
Hmm.
right? The Southern drawl is not the same as the Southern twang. And he talks about there being 7 different accents in the South, but he sort of brushes over. And I feel like his like map of all of these different states that it's like, yeah, okay, I'm sure you can find people who speak with a southern drawl type accent across that entire band, but there are going to be individual differences on like smaller group levels
Hmm.
that if you're a native of that area, you will be able to identify. Um, so I think that the video does sort of brush together, and you get the same thing. He was talking about the Yooper accent, but
Hmm.
then he bundled it together with the Upper Midwestern accent, and you can clearly hear those are related. But if you listen to some of the clips he's using as examples, and this is one of the reasons I like the fact that he has those clips to use as examples, you can actually hear it's not entirely the same accent. There's a difference between the radio clip he plays of the Upper Midwestern and the video he plays of the people with the Upper Peninsula, specifically the Yooper accent, right? So there are certain points where I think the video does brush over. And this is another thing that I found when I was looking for accent videos is you find people will gravitate towards these ideas of standard well-known American accents, and the Southern accent is a really big one for that.
Yeah.
But also I found a lot of other videos that were doing like there's the Bostonian accent. And I mean, I've taken a linguistics class and I live near Boston. There's dozens of different Boston accents, and some of them you would never associate with being from Boston. Some of them are endangered, like he was listing some that like are disappearing.
Hmm.
And for all I know, in the time that I was studying them in college, there was like one family that was speaking this accent at the time that I was in my linguistics class, and they've probably since passed away. So there's a good chance that the accent of the Boston Brahmins, which is the one that I have in my head as being like really surprising from coming from Boston, uh, maybe that isn't around anymore, which is sort of a sad thought. But my general point here is I do think that the video, like, on the one hand, I think it generalizes a little bit, but on the other hand, I like the specifics that the presenter does go into, and he's generally willing to explain that yeah, we're talking about these accent things, and he'll include some of the like big go-to accents like the southern drawl, but he'll put a little bit of nuance in there and be like there's 7 different varieties, there's probably more than 7, but more than just the one he's played. And then the various clips will sort of, if you're paying attention, emphasize the idea that not necessarily everywhere this accent is spoken is it spoken the same. There's going to be those nuances. That's all sort of one point that I would make in response to your argument. The other point that I would say is I do think it's fair. I do think that in the United States, although I think there is a greater variety and wealth of accents in these different regions than people are often aware of, at the same time, I don't think we have the same level of specificity that you get from places like London or just other places in the UK, you can go down to different like individual neighborhoods in London and get different accents. And there are very few places in the United States that have that level of specificity.
Right. Or maybe it's just also a case of the knowledge base, right? I
Hmm.
might hear two different American speakers. I could tell, okay, you got different accents, but I don't know where you're from, and I don't know
Right.
how subtle those accent shifts are. Um, so yeah, it's and also then just the scale of the country is just so different. It's very hard to try to
Yeah.
pinpoint. But I mean, the video is a nice sort of entry point video. I mean, again, the
Yes.
issue that he's got is he's trying to present seven accents in what was it, like 15 minutes more or less. So naturally, you're going to
Right.
have to cut certain corners in
Hmm.
describing certain things.
Yeah.
But I got a
I
basic
should.
sense of what
Yeah.
the accents were. Yeah.
I should say, like, I worry that I came off as overly critical in what I was saying before. I completely appreciate the fact that this person um, put together the video the way that he did. I think he did a great job. And like I said, one of the very few people I was able to find. I mean, maybe there's more out there. It's hard to find videos on YouTube, but one of the few people I was able to find who actually used clips, which just huge respect for me just for that alone.
Mm.
Um, so I think, especially because, and you add to that the fact that, as you're saying, this is a British person who's presenting it. So not even necessarily someone who's like an expert in the local area and all the sounds that they're hearing there, right? This is someone who's coming at it from a foreign perspective as well. So I agree. This is meant to be sort of a basic introductory, fun sort of video, and it's perfect for what it is. And me having some quibbles, right? That's fine, right? It's something that if it catches your interest and you're like, oh, some of these I expected, some of these I didn't expect, and it prompts you to be like, let's find out a little bit more about the linguistic diversity of the United States or even all around the world in the various ways that people speak English. That's perfect, right? That's what the video is for. It's a starting point, and I think it's very interesting from that perspective.
Right. Absolutely. And I kind of also resonated with it too a little bit when he was talking about like the New Orleans accent. He was talking about, well, it was a port city, and you've got all this melting pot of different people who came to the port. And
Hmm.
as soon as I was listening to this, like, oh, that just sounds like, even though the accent's completely different, but it's like the town of Liverpool in the UK. It's the same thing,
Hmm.
port city, and it has a very unique accent there and the surrounding area based upon the uh, the trade that occurred, during like the Industrial Revolution and that, and the various immigrant groups who made their way to the
Hmm.
city. So that is definitely I was able to watch. I go, well, that makes a lot of logical sense in terms of those things, and also then the pockets. So there's like those islands off the coast that have a very unique accent because they have a slightly isolationist sort of view of like the the language and that. The thing I found kind of interesting
Hmm.
was going in, if you're going to ask me, right, what accents would you want to hear or would you expect to learn about? Southern accent potentially, but also the other one I've always heard about is the Wisconsinite accent.
Hmm.
And I came away from the video the first time going, wait, did he not mention the Wisconsinite accent? Is that then part of the Upper Midwest accent? Is the thing he was talking about, the Yooper accent in Michigan? Is that the same as the Wisconsinite accent, or is that different? I was left a little bit confused if that was what I had listened
Yeah,
to
the
before.
Wisconsinite. So yeah, Wisconsinite is this is one of those group things, right? The Wisconsinite would fall under the Upper Midwestern accent,
Hmm,
but he pushed it together with the Yooper accent.
hmm,
And each one of those things is subtly different. This is why I was saying the clips, the one that he plays that's just sound is closer in my mind to the Wisconsinite accent than it is to the Yooper accent that he identifies sort of at the start of the segment.
right, interesting. Okay, okay, okay. Because I think when I watched it through the second time, I was like, yeah, knowing American geography, I think that's where it would come under, but I wasn't too sure. But then again, it's one of those. It's a
Right.
nice introductory video. If I was really, really interested, I could then go and look at the
Hmm.
specifics between the Michigan accent, Wisconsin accent, the Yooper accent, all this sort of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, definitely enjoyable, and as I said, like I like consuming like these types of videos, right? Long form enough that it's there's some detail, there's a bit more meat on the bone, but not so much that it's a drag to watch through, to listen through, or to watch. And especially as somebody who I'm not extremely au fait with accents, so it's a nice sort of introductory thing. And definitely when we talk about US accents from now on, I'll have a slightly wider knowledge base now, and not just be like, it's all the same apart from the South. I can be a little bit more, which I knew wasn't the case. But
Right.
especially the problem is again, it's media, right? Media portrays a certain type of accent is more likely to appear. Same with the
Yep.
UK accent. I'm getting kind of annoyed now when people who are not familiar with British accents, maybe it's a Spanish thing more than it's something that my father-in-law said to me once. He was like, "Oh, I like the London accent." I'm like, I literally don't understand what that means as a sentence. There's no such thing as the
Yeah.
London accent, as you said. Like Cockney
Right.
alone is one. That's one from one
Hmm.
neighborhood, one region. So that's just ridiculous. There's just no such thing. There'll be a variety depending on social, demographics and geographic region, and goodness what else. So you can't put a blanket statement like, "Oh, I like the London accent." No, you like the English. What you mean is standard RP, most likely. The English
Yeah.
language you hear in media, especially the older media
Hmm.
before there was more regional diversity and all this sort of thing. That's what you mean. You mean standard RP. You don't mean London. But they're just the two kind
Right.
of mixed together because most of the media came from London. So yeah, um,
Yeah. And I think that was also sort of one of the things that I was looking to get away from when I was finding these other videos. And it's like you're just doing the big accents, right? You're just doing the equivalent of received pronunciation and saying, oh, this is the London accent, right? And I was like, but there's way more diversity than that, right? There's just people talk in all sorts of different ways.
mm,
Let the actual people speak and let's get some variety in here. And that's where this video came in, and I was happy about that. So yeah, it's good. It's that's one of the things that I wanted to encourage, right? Is this idea that it's not just there's a handful of accents in the States. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and yeah, you can sort of conglomerate a lot of them together. But even then, I feel like the media representation is just very narrowing. And I have to wonder just to what extent, because this is one thing that like media has an effect on language, because like the fact that you can watch so much TV and you're not going to get exposed to anywhere near this level of diversity of accents, even if you're watching a lot of American TV. And I sort of wonder to what extent like constant viewing of TV shows and programs and things is like pushing people on the ground away from accents that they would otherwise develop. I've done like zero actual research on this. I'm just curious about that as a force. Like what extent is what level of a role is media playing in the decline of like accents, linguistic diversity?
I mean, definitely the language is becoming more homogenous because especially I mean, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK, because for a long, long time, radio presenters and then later television presenters had to present in standard RP, so that the
Mm-hmm.
regionality of those accents was suppressed. And then just naturally over time, then if you're even if you got your own native accents, if you're watching media that has a certain type of accent, then your accent will naturally sort of mellow out a bit. Now I think it's a bit different because they're more willing to promote those regional accents, but also just because um, there are greater variety of actors and actresses now who are from different parts of the UK, and they're not afraid to hide their accent either. So you turn on, like a TV program like Adolescence, right, which was a very famous show over the last few months in the UK. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as the dad started speaking, I was like, oh, I know where you're from, right? And it's good to hear
Mm-hmm.
that. And say like the Doctor Who, the long running TV series, there was one. I have to send you the clip. It's very funny. The first female Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, she's from Huddersfield, and she has a very funny clip where she says that for where she's from specifically, the nickname of people there are Shats. So she's a Shat lass, and she's not afraid at all to hide her accent and to promote the accent and the language of where she's from, which is great. So you get that
Yeah,
exposure.
that's great.
Um, but yeah, naturally, just culture is becoming a little bit more homogenized because you're influenced more by media and the wider sort of country view of something rather than your very close neighborhood. Not even just culture, like the accent, but in terms of vocabulary and also then food and all this sort of thing, right? Everything is kind of tied together. And also
Yeah.
movement of people also is a huge factor. When people
Right.
stayed in their own isolated communities and didn't stray far from home for work and things, then naturally they would retain those accents and be very strong. And then now there's just so much movement of people around the country.
Mm-hmm.
Look at my case, right? Born in England, but then moved up to the Highlands of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, then you take certain things with you, but also then you would lose certain things as well about your accent. It mellows out or whatever. Or like me, I've got mostly, I think, standard British RP, but I've got that mix of random Scottish stuff that will come through. And if you listen long enough, you realize, oh yeah, he is Scottish, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
as strong as somebody who was born on the Western Isles and has lived in Scotland their whole life and is constantly surrounded by Scottish Scottish accent speaking family and that. So all kind of it's a more of a melting pot than it used to be, but at the same time the accents are maybe kind of a little bit more homogenous. It's kind of it's a weird one, but it's interesting. I found the video very interesting. The other comment I'll make on it was the mention of BUC-EE'S as a
Oh.
I don't know, is BUC-EE'S a thing in Connecticut?
No.
Okay, but do you know what BUC-EE'S is?
Uh, Maybe I don't.
Oh,
Can you clarify? Maybe I'll.
Oh, is this
Maybe
something
I'll.
I know about your country that you do? So it's like a convenience store, but it's like mostly these really big gas stations, and they have a really big store beside them. They've got Bucky the Beaver as their mascot. Maybe it's more in the
There you go.
south.
Yep. Nope. You
Um,
know more about that aspect of my country than I do.
so I only know about Bucky's because of jet lag, because they did a game show where one of the series they did was they played. It's not Connect 4. What was the other one? Oh, it was a race to see who could visit the most states in X number of days.
Ah.
And one of them, they had to claim a state. You had to go to the state and then complete a challenge in said state. And one of the challenges was you had to go and visit a Buc-ee's and spend at least $100. And I was like, what the hell is a Buc-ee's? And the team who did it, it was an American guy and an Irish guy. And the Irish guy didn't know what a Buc-ee's was either, or how significantly, culturally significant Buc-ee's was. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
the meme in my head is them driving. Where did they go? Was it in Kentucky they went? Oh, I'm going to get this wrong. That's terrible. One of the Midwest states, they went to a Buc-ee's. And just them driving along the motorway, and also then the scale of distance. There was a billboard saying Buc-ee's, and then maybe it was like 60 miles away. For me, as a UK person, that's ridiculous that you'd advertise
Yeah.
a shop that far away. And just
60 miles away. Yeah.
the American guy was going nuts, going, Brian, look, Buc-ee's, and they just played loads of these clips going, Buc-ee's, Brian, Buc-ee's. I was just like, what on earth is this? I was just so confused by the entire thing. So it's only then when he mentioned it in the video, I was like, Buc-ee's, I know what Buc-ee's is.
Oh, that's so funny.
Very, very
Yeah, I had
random,
no clue.
random knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun though.
Oh dear, dear. So yeah, there you go. So you learn a lot of things from jet lag, especially about America when they're traveling through it and stuff.
Yeah.
Buc-ee's. And we don't. I
Yeah,
don't think we have
I'm-
any equivalent in the UK. There's no equivalent to Buc-ee's, I don't think, at all. So
I believe that.
there you go.
I mean,
can't remember how
not
that came
having
out.
been there in particular, I have been to other places that, as you described, they're like sort of giant stores that are attached to gas stations. So I have an idea of the sort of place you're talking about, even if I don't necessarily know Buc-ee's in particular. But this is the fun thing, right? I get to learn about my country as we do these things as well, right? And some of these accents, right? It's like I know a little bit about some things, but any individual one of these accents, we're talking about the quiz, right? I was never going to guess any of them. I don't have that level of familiarity,
Like,
so it's fun for me too because I get to learn about my own country and the various cultures within it at the same time.
so the only thing I was confused about at the very beginning, he talked about New Orleans, and apparently that is not the pronunciation. But as a British person,
It really confused me.
I get a free pass. Is it not
Yeah.
New Orleans?
I thought maybe it is New Orleans, but he said there are two things that are out: Nolans and New Orleans. And those are both the two ways that I've heard it pronounced. So I don't know.
Oh dear.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you might have to go to New Orleans and find out, and then report back.
I'm gonna have to. Yeah. The guy who was doing the presenter was like in the clip he was playing. He then played a later section of the clip that was like British people get a pass, and I
Yep.
was like, oh. And then, so I was glad that you're the one who's been naming New Orleans the whole time because that's how I pronounce it, and I'm doing it wrong, and I don't get a pass. So
I guess maybe the thing that's different is how much you stress the E sound, and you got to make sure that you got that A comes in afterwards. You don't combine the E and the A into one vowel sound. Maybe instead of New
maybe,
Orleans, New
yeah,
Orleans. I can't even pronounce it. That's so hard to say.
yeah. I don't know, but like this is one of the things that like I don't know in particular, like I said about New Orleans or however you're supposed to pronounce it. But I have heard there's different places where like if you're not from there, you're gonna think it's pronounced one way, and then you talk to the locals, and they're like, "What are you doing? It's pronounced this way, right?"
Right.
And the classic, I don't know how I came to figure this out. I think maybe it was through some friends of mine, and it wasn't one of my like direct experiences. But for some reason, I know that there's a place in Kentucky, and if you look at it on a map, and you follow what you might expect would be the pronunciation, you would expect it to be pronounced Louisville. And
Oh yeah.
apparently, locals are like, "Oh, I can tell like you're not from around here because this is Louisville."
Sorry, what? Louisville.
Louisville. Yep.
Okay.
I'm probably getting that second pronunciation a little bit off too, but it's closer than Louisville would be. Louisville is wrong. It's actually Louisville. Louisville, Kentucky.
Well, that's British English carry on. That is like. I'm looking on Wikipedia. It has a pronunciation section on. Okay, let me quickly listen to these one sec. Louisville. Oh, apparently Louisville apparently is a popular pronunciation of the word.
Ah.
Let's see.
From locals or from because I definitely know outside of that area, Louisville is what they call it.
Oh,
But I've heard it's wrong. I've heard it's
Louisville.
that sort of you almost drop the I sound as you make it Louisville, right?
Yeah, I'm looking here. There is one where they have Louisville, but the stress on the Lou bit. But yeah, the other two have a
Right.
clear schwa in the middle, so you don't pronounce that E sound strongly at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
uh, the only thing they say is the Louis. Oh, sorry, no, it's not Louisville because that's not right. Louisville or Louisville Visitor Center says that the rare Louisville is completely unacceptable. But apparently there is a town in Colorado which is Louisville. Go figure.
There you go.
There are also hybrid ways of saying the name, so it seems like there is debate. Oh, apparently
There you go.
Louisville is less common, but it's a rural way of saying the name.
Ah. So maybe my friends are friends with people in the rural part of that area of Kentucky.
Possibly. So there's clearly a
But
lot
there you go,
there's
right?
hot debate about it.
Linguistic diversity right on the ground in a small space, right? We've done it.
I mean that's something. That's one I do want to send you at some point. Is to do with British town names because they're just even as a native, a lot of them I wouldn't know it unless
Mm-hmm.
I'd get told off. I would go there. And this happened to my parents when they moved up to Scotland, and they kept mispronouncing everything. And then they would say it with so much confidence, and say like there's one town in the sort of the middle of the Highlands called Tomartin, and then they'd be like, oh, Tomatin. Tomatin's like, no, it's not Tomatin. So yeah, you just it's a real minefield. I thought American
Mm-hmm.
pronunciation was a lot more obvious, but it's interesting there's some which are exceptions like that one. The one I don't understand, which again is New Orleans, because at least from a British perspective, if we have I don't know why British people are so persistent with this in particular. Maybe because of the influence of the French language on English, but we pronounce as well as possible. I made that clear. As well as possible, we pronounce French places with French pronunciation. Paris is the exception, but I would never say Nantes or Nantes. Would say Nantes. I would say
Mm-hmm.
Marseille, not Marseilles or something like that. We'd always pronounce it with
Mm-hmm.
the French quote unquote way of pronouncing it quote unquote. So I find it very interesting how New Orleans is not New Orleans or something of that nature. They've really anglicized the pronunciation of the town, of the second word.
Well, like I said, I can't vouch for New Orleans, right? I'm just going to say it wrong because that's the only way I know how to say it, right? Maybe you talk to a local. Maybe this will be one of the things that I look into for homework for our next episode, where I can dig into some of the, quote unquote local, not quote unquote local, quote unquote correct local pronunciations for that particular place in the United States. And we can do a little bit more of a deep dive because I have no idea even to say, like, oh yeah, they've totally anglicized it. Maybe they haven't. Maybe it's very French, and I just don't know.
I've got to do the research. But yeah, I think I was going back onto the video, there's a definite thing between on-the-ground knowledge and external knowledge when you're having to research it from afar. I mean, there's a completely different topic, but I had it actually tonight. I popped into a Twitch stream. I just said, I'm making some dinner. They just asked me, what are you making? So I told them I was having what we'd say, so weird saying it in English, but also in Catalan, because I don't really speak Catalan very much, but pan con tomate in Spanish.
Okay.
Which is because most Spanish people don't put butter on bread, they'll put tomato.
Mm-hmm.
The way, at least I've always seen it being done at home and also in restaurants in Catalonia, is you take the bread either toasted or not, but normally it'd be toasted in a restaurant, and you actually have the whole tomato. You cut the tomato in half, and you literally squish all the flesh of the tomato onto the bread, and you might put a bit of garlic beforehand and some oil and stuff. What I consider to be, what I've been told is like fake pan con tomate. Sorry, other Spanish people. It's very nice, but it's not the same. Is if you go to other parts of Spain, they'll give you the bread that's toasted or not toasted, but instead of giving the whole tomatoes and you squeeze the pulp or the flesh on yourself, they will give you pre-grated tomato and you spoon it on and you spread it with the spoon or with the fork, with the knife onto the bread. And that's very different. And it's something very obvious. I remember when we went to Oviedo, my wife and I, we went to Oviedo, and I saw it in the restaurant of the hotel for breakfast. I was like, oh look, it's pan con tomate, and she was like, yeah, but it's like fake pan con tomate. Sorry, Spanish people. Sorry. And it was just really funny because then I was explaining this to the stream, and the guy who I was watching just spontaneously looked up a video on YouTube and was showing it to the stream of somebody making pan con tomate. But the title of the video was in Catalan, so they would say, oh, this is the traditional Catalan way of doing tomato on bread, but there's two Americans doing it, and they showed it, and I instantly wrote in the chat, no, this is the fake one.
Yep. That's funny.
It's not. This is
the weird thing.
Authentic thing. Yeah.
The weird thing is you said that food name, and as far as I know, I've never heard of it before. But the image that jumped into my brain was of a knife spreading like an actual whole tomato across bread. Just as you described.
Oh no!
So I don't.
So what we do, we don't use it. We don't use an implement. We just squish it with our hand.
Okay. All right. Good. Then I haven't. Cause I was like, did I like come across something and have it stick in my head and then completely forget about it? Because I've had that happen before. Right. Good. Then I'm just completely wrong. Excellent.
Because as soon as the video started, I was watching. They said you need to have a tomato with a thick skin. I'm like, no. It doesn't work. You don't want a thick skin tomato. You want the opposite. You want something which has high flesh, low skin content. When you squish it, you've got all the skin left, but it's just skin. All the flesh just immediately leaves the skin and goes
onto the bread.
There's a very particular type of tomato. I can't remember what it's called now, but it's literally something like in Catalan, tomato for squashing or tomato for something of that ilk. It's got the verb, which means literally to use it for this bread with tomatoes, so we're saying it in English.
Cool.
So that's the problem, right? Where, they were looking it up going, oh, look at this authentic Catalan bread with tomato. And then I, as the local knowledge was coming in, going, nope, that's not it.
Yep.
Right? So I think it's a real issue. And then I
it
does make me wonder how much media if I have consumed, if it's to do with cooking or to do with languages or whatever, of people from outside saying this is how it is, and then there'll be all the natives
Mm.
going, actually, that's not right.
It's uh, it's like Gilman amnesia,
Oh,
where
I don't know
it's
this.
it's oh, it's this phenomenon where if you're an expert on something and you read like a newspaper and you see an article, or it doesn't have to be like, this is just the stereotypical example, right? But let's pretend you're reading a news article and you're an expert in something, you can immediately see all the things they've gotten wrong about your area of expertise,
Mm,
and you're generally dissatisfied with it. But as soon as you go into an area where you don't have that level of expertise, you read the newspaper summary and you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. That must be how it is.
right, right.
Right? You don't think to apply that same level of critical thinking that you have for your own expertise to the summary you're getting about something completely different.
It's
So I'm
fascinating.
applying it, right. You've got the local knowledge on one thing, but you have no idea even how much outside stuff you've accepted that's just this, summarized version for external consumption, right?
Right.
And uh, you don't even know. You're just like, oh, of course that's what they do in Spain. That's tomato bread, or
Yeah.
tomatoes on bread, whatever you want to turn that into in English.
Right. Right. And even like, especially with very traditional things, it's so complicated because a lot of it is very heated. I mean, the classic one is the paella, right? The classic rice
Right.
dish. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's from Valencia, and the Valencians have a very particular way, and it's all very fussy. You need to use this meat or no meat, or seafood or no seafood, and these beans and blah blah blah, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so much so that they have a word for it. If people from other parts of Spain try to cook it and they get it wrong, they say it's arroz con cosas, rice with stuff.
Uh,
It's not
there you
authentic.
go.
Um, and
Yep.
it's just, yeah, everything like this, especially when it comes to culture, because people identify
Yes.
so closely with that. They are very passionate
Mm-hmm.
about it if they see it being misrepresented on a worldwide
Right.
scale. So yeah, it's very easy to get
Yeah.
riled up.
I'm of two minds. I'm of two minds when it comes to that sort of thing, right? On the one hand, I can appreciate the idea that, this is the authentic version. On the other hand, there's a part of me that's like, if it's good and people enjoy it, like, how much does it matter that it's not authentic, right?
Right.
Um, I understand, right? Like I said, I'm of two minds on this, so I can see sort of both sides, uh, where it's like, yeah, but that's not right, And to some extent, that's just a gut level reaction, right? If you're from a culture and you've got this thing that's like integral to your culture, and you go around and you see other people saying like, "Oh, this is your culture," you'll be like, "No, excuse me." I'm going to tell you what's actually my culture because I would know, right? I definitely understand that impulse. But then there's another part where it's just like, yeah, but it's delicious, right? And it's like, especially when it's something related to food, right? So I'm thinking now of like the American version of Chinese cuisine, which is very different than authentic Chinese cuisine.
Right.
But like, I think the big problem, at least with the American example that I'm giving here, is like, if you just really only know and associate like authentic Chinese food with the sort of thing that you get in the United States, and you go to China and order like you would from a Chinese place here, that would be a problem. But as long as you know that the one thing like isn't the authentic thing, like I enjoy our version, the American version of Chinese food. I also enjoy, there's an authentic Chinese restaurant like in my area as well. I also enjoy their food. Uh, so that's sort of influenced my perspective, I think, on being like, yeah, I understand the idea that you want to be authentic, but another part of me is like, as long as you know that the like mass market version is a mass market version and it's not necessarily authentic, like I feel like you come across really snooty and might end up hurting your cause a little bit if you want to be. It's like the champagne, right? Technically, it only comes from that one very specific region where they use exactly the right grapes and they do it exactly the right way. Um, and I just feel like
Well,
you run the risk of shooting yourself in the foot if you insist too strongly on that sort of thing.
because that's the thing in Europe, that's quite a big deal because they've got it. I can't remember now what it's called. It's DOP, but now I can't remember the correct acronym. But it's like protective of origin, kind of, where you like same with Stilton cheese, it only comes from a very specific region of England and things. And even like I don't know, maybe Manchego cheese in Spain is the same. But yeah, they're very very particular about it. You can only call it something if it comes from a particular region, and I think I'm okay with that. Because
Mm-hmm.
if something's got a heritage, I think it's right to protect it. If it's like especially if it's an individual ingredient, I think I'm okay with that. As soon as you start talking about something like a dish, where there's so many different combinations of things that can go into it, I think a little bit more liberty can be had with it. But again, I think it depends on how you frame something. If somebody
Mm-hmm.
like with all seriousness stares down the camera and says, "I'm cooking an authentic carbonara" or whatever it is, then if you're going
Right.
to use a word like that, you need to stay true to it. If you make it clear in your description, well, I'm going to take, paraphrasing, I'm going to take liberties a little bit with the recipe, I'm going to mix it up and do something a bit different, then, okay, then we can sit there and go, okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an issue. And obviously, that people at home can cook it however they want. They're going to put in their own spin on things. It all depends
Right.
on the way you're framing something. Again, with knowledge, right? If you're approaching something trying to pretend to be an expert in a particular thing, then you need to make sure you
Mm-hmm.
get your facts right, or you're willing to go back and correct things and be aware, be receptive to feedback
Mm-hmm.
if there's some certain on the ground knowledge or whatever that you've overlooked. If
Yeah,
it's
I think I think that much we can agree on for sure.
yeah, um, if you're clearly, if you're presenting something as a and it's obvious like an over. I mean, the classic one is the oversimplified history videos. I don't know if you've seen them at all.
Mm-hmm.
The clues in the name. It's oversimplified.
Yeah.
There are going to be liberties
Right.
with this.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to watch it for pure historical accuracy. You're going to watch it to get a general gist of something, and if that
Mm-hmm.
sparks your curiosity to then research more about it, fill your boots, kind of thing. That's kind of the way
Right.
I view it. It depends on how it's all framed. Um,
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
so yeah, I have to. I have to put my thoughts together and see if I can. I think what the next clips will be that I'll send over. I've got a couple in mind, but I'll definitely have to do an British English accent thing now. Since
Yes.
you've done an American one for me. I'll have to figure
Yeah,
out
I'll
what
be
accent.
curious to see that. I'll have to start racking my brains too. Maybe we can open this up. We were talking about posting a little bit of an advanced preview in our Discord, your Discord. I don't want a Discord. Uh,
Are you
uh,
sure?
oh, quite certain. Um, but maybe we can like take and this was always on the table. I think take some suggestions from people. Um, if you've got like classic American, British, or whatever your native culture is, clips that you want us to watch and review and have some fun with, that would be definitely. I mean, there's going to be times when I have time to do the research, and there's also going to be times like earlier this summer, really not. So that would help fill those gaps for sure. But yeah, I'll definitely start looking around for some other videos to send you as well. I'll have to think about other classic American comedy skits and things. I have one in mind for the next comedy skit that I could send you, but I don't have a great wealth of those sorts of clips at my fingertips. So I'll be doing some searching myself.
Well, we're looking forward to it. A little bit of homework. But yeah, as I said,
Mm-hmm.
as Rick said, if there's anything in particular you want us to react to, feel free to leave it either in the comments or if you want to join the Discord, feel free to do so. And then you'll find the Keeping You Company channel and just pop stuff in there, and we'll get around to it. I think we can. We've gone for almost 3 hours, so that's quite a stint. I think we can
Oh yeah,
put a little bit
that's
of
a
pause.
very healthy episode of keeping you company.
That poor train's been going round in circles. It's probably had enough by now, so it needs to rest. So yeah, it's been
That's right.
we keep every time we go to these podcasts, we're like, do we have enough stuff to talk about? And then we do anyway. So
Oh yeah, we just blew right through our plans. Yeah.
stop doubting ourselves. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see exactly when we record the next podcast and things. But until then, it's been a pleasure, Rook. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks as always, Scott Sword. It's been a pleasure for me as well. And I hope everyone listening was able to get something from this. I hope we were able to keep you company.
Absolutely. Seconded. Take everybody. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've had an amazing summer so far, and you have a good August. And yeah, in the meantime, we'll be in the Discord and such and in the comments. So yeah, take everybody. Thanks for listening. See you soon.
Bye.